Forward. The translation is based partly on that by Publish the Burma Pitaka Association, which 05364EN refers to the commentary for clarification of the meaning. I have done my best to make it easy to read and understand rather than SF5ing for literal accuracy. My own comments on the translation use a different font color and paragraph spacing to distinguish them 5164 ohm the translation. I have added footnote references and hyperlinks for further study. Footnote references to the Pali texts refer to the Roman script edition of the Pali Text Society. In the translations, these page numbers are given near the spine or in the body of the text like this. 290, which is where the Satipatthana Sutta begins, D290. Hard copies or ebooks of the long discourses translated by Maurice Walsh, or the middle-length discourses translated by Bhikkhu Nyanamoli, and Bhikkhu Bodhi are available 5164 ohm wisdom books. Other translations by Somathera, Gnanasathera, and Thanissaro Bhikkhu can be found on the Access to Insight website. I have adopted the paragraph numbering used by the Pali text of the CSCD Tipitaka so that those who know some Pachi can easily find the relevant passage referred to in the translation or in my comments. The subheadings, in italics, are my translations of the section headings found in the CSCD edition. To study the Pali texts, I recommend downloading the CST4 program. In several places, I have added the Pali term in parentheses. An index serves as a glossary of Pali terms used in the translation. The entire Pali text is included for the benefit of those who know Pachi or who want to learn it. Reading famous discourses side by side with a translation is the most enjoyable way to learn and familiarize oneself with. Sentence S fucture. It is no substitute for studying Pali grammar, but it is a good way to start learning for those, like me, who find linguistic studies too daunting. At least, you will build up your vocabulary of common Pali words and stock phrases which are used 51 Mahir 64 equally throughout the Tipitaka. This edition will, no doubt, still have many imperfections. Nevertheless, I hope it will encourage readers to study this important discourse. All those who gained realization in the Buddha's time by listening to a long discourse, like this one, or just a single verse, had well-developed perfections as a result of practicing meditation in a previous life. In the case of those monks who realized arahantship at the end of this discourse, they had already been practicing meditation before attending the teaching of this discourse. If a meal is pre-cooked, it only needs a few minutes to reheat in a microwave oven. Otherwise, you have to spend many hours to obtain and prepare the ingredients and cook them to prepare a delicious meal. Bhikkhu Pesala, September 2021, an exposition of the Satipatthana Sutta. There are two versions of the Satipatthana Sutta, the Maha Satipatthana Sutta of the Digha Nikaya and the Satipatthana Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya. The CSCD Tipitaka text of both versions is identical, but in other editions, the section on the Four Noble Truths found in the Satipatthana Sutta is not expanded fully in the Satipatthana Sutta. Below, I give the translation of the longer version. Satipatthana Sutta 372. Eva Misuta, Ekam Samaya Bhagava Kurusu Viharati, Kamasadamam Nama Kurunam Nigamo, Tafako Bhagava Bhikkhu, Amantesi, Bhikkhavoti, Badante Tita Bhikkhu Bhagavato, Pakasosum, Bhagava Etadavoka. Thus have I heard, at one time the Blessed One was dwelling among the Kuru people at Kamasadama, a market town of the Kuru people. There the Blessed One addressed the monks. Monks! Venerable Sir, those monks replied to the Blessed One. Then the Blessed One said, at the first Buddhist council, when Mahakassapa questioned the Venerable Ananda about this discourse, the Venerable Ananda replied, thus have I heard, and first gave the details of where it was given, and to whom. The discourse was given when the Blessed One was dwelling among the Kuru people near the market town of Kamasadama. It should be inferred that the Blessed One was dwelling near the market town, as the monks did not usually stay in built-up areas, but in forest groves, cemeteries, or parks on the outskirts. The Jetavana monastery, donated to the Sangha by Anathapindika, for example, was formerly a royal pleasure park belonging to Prince Jeta. The text doesn't actually say where the discourse was given, but simply states that Kamasadama was a market town of the Kuru people. The rest has to be inferred. The Udasa, or introduction to the discourse, was given by the Blessed one himself, a 5364 error getting the attention of the assembled monks. Introduction. 373. Ekayano ayam, bhikkave, mago satanam visuddhya, soka paridevam, samatikamaya dukkado manasanam, athangamaya nyayasa adigamaya, Nibbānasa saki kiryaya, yadidam kataro Satipatthana. This is the only way, monks, for the purification of beings, for the transcendence of grief and lamentation, for the extinguishing of pain and sorrow, for attaining the right method, for the realization of Nibbāna, that is to say the four foundations of mindfulness. Ikaino is variously translated as one way, Maurice Walsh. The direct path, Bhikkhu Bodhi and Ajahn Thanissaro, the one and only way, Burma Pitaka Association. This is the only way, Soma Thera and Jnanasata Thera. The latter is also the fifth translation in Mahasi abroad. Mindfulness, the only way, where it says, Ekayana means the only way. There is no other way, no alternative. If you walk straight on along the only road, you will not go as fey as there is no junction. You are sure to reach your destination. Similarly, since Satipatthana is the only way, if you continue feigning yourself in mindfulness, you will ultimately attain arahantship, the noble state of complete purity, 5164 all defilements. The essential meaning, then, is that the Satipatthana method is right mindfulness, samasati, as a factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, and it is this path that is rightly referred to as the only way or the direct way. With no junctions or dead ends, there is no attaining of the right method for one who is unmindful, but for one who practices properly, reaching. The destination is guaranteed, and this guarantee is given by the Buddha himself at the end of the discourse. Satanam Visuddhya means for the purification of living beings. However, it should be noted that not all living beings can follow this path. Animals, hungry ghosts, and those in the hell realms are not able to cultivate right mindfulness. Primarily, it refers to human beings. Although the Buddha was speaking to the monks, many lay people were also present. And no doubt many beings, 5164 the celestial realms, also came to listen. All such living beings who are not arahants have minds that are defiled, to a greater or less extent by greed, ill will, and delusion. They are able to remove these mental defilements and purify 5064 their minds by following this path to the end. The farther along the path that they proceed, the more their minds get purified, until the culmination of the path when all defilements are completely and permanently eradicated by the path of arahantship. Sokapardavan samatikamaya means for the transcendence of grief and lamentation. Other translators give the translation of soka as sorrow, but as will be seen later in the explanation of the Four Noble Truths, soka is much more severe than mere sadness or sorrow as opposed to happiness. It burns and consumes the mind like a fire. The PTS dictionary says that it is derived 5164 sketch shoka, which means burning grief. When people are afflicted with severe loss, such as the death of a parent, child, or spouse, they are not just sad but grieve and lament as they feel immense physical and mental pain. Parideva means lamentation, wailing, crying, weeping, and sobbing. The word samatikamaya is derived 5164 adikamati, equals to cross, to go beyond, and the prefix sam emphasizes completion or perfection. The meaning is therefore to go completely beyond, or to transcend. One who cultivates this path fully is not only able to suppress their grief, but is able to abandon it entirely. Dukkha domanasana athangamaya means to extinguish pain and sorrow. Here, dukkha means simply physical pain, while domanasa is mental pain or sorrow. The expression surya athangama means the setting of the sun. In hot counties like Bihar, where the Buddha mostly taught, the sun is extremely hot and oppressive 5164 early morning to late evening. When it finally falls down to the horizon and sets, the burning finally ceases. Physical pain is extremely oppressive, and when it ceases, one feels great relief. The mental pain of sorrow, too, is very difficult to bear. The mind feels heavy and unresponsive. Although one wishes only to be happy, sad thoughts pervade the mind and, if dwelt upon, only lead to greater despair. When sorrow is replaced by happiness, the mind is again buoyant and optimistic. Nyasa adhigamaya means to attain the right method. When learning any skill, such as driving, at first it seems very difficult as there is so much to remember. However, gradually one acquires the necessary knowledge and experience, and one succeeds. learning to be mindful constantly throughout the entire day without the mind wandering here and there is also very difficult. When Satipatthana meditation is taught, the instructor should give only a few basic exercises at first. For example, 2. Be mindful of the body postures, breathing, or the abdominal movements. Only later, when the student has mastered that skill to some degree, should more instructions be given to be mindful of feelings, thoughts, and mental states. It will probably take many weeks or months of constant feigning for the meditator to gain mastery over the mind and learn to keep it focused on objects arising and passing away in the present moment. Nibbāna Sakikiriyaya means for the realization of Nibbāna. Only A53-64 or prolonged and sustained effort can the meditator develop sufficient concentration and insight to pass through the highest stages of insight, knowledge, and realize Nibbāna. That goal can only be realized if the method is thoroughly mastered. Then the meditator becomes a Sefim winner who is guaranteed to put an end to all suffering in due course. Yadidan Kataro Satipatthāna means, that is to say, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Sati means mindfulness. Upatthana means to set up or establish and make firm. In the beginning of the practice, mindfulness is intermittent and unstable, but gradually awareness develops. More objects are noted clearly as they arise and pass away, and mindfulness remains steady in the present moment. Katame Kataro, Ida, Bhikkhave, Bhikkhu Kaye Kayanapasi Viharati Api, Sampajano Satima Vinaya Loke Abhijadomanasa, Vedanasu, Vedananupasi Viharati Atapi Sampajano Satima, Vinaya Loke, Abhijadomanasam, Citte Cittanupasi Viharati Atapi Sampajano Satima, Vinaya Loke Abhijadomanasam, Damesu Damanupasi Viharati, Atapi Sampajano Satima Vinaya Loke Abhijadomanasam. What for? Here, monks, a monk dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending, and mindful, having overcome covetousness and sorrow concerning the world. He dwell contemplating feelings in feelings. He dwells contemplating thoughts in thoughts. He dwells contemplating mental objects in mental objects, ardent, clearly comprehending and mindful, having overcome covetousness and sorrow concerning the world. Bhikkhav here means not only monks, but any meditator who sees danger in samsara. Whenever the monks were present in the congregation, unless he was replying to a particular individual, the Buddha would address them as Bhikkhave, O monks. If nuns, bhikkhun, male lay disciples, and female lay disciples, upasika, were also present, it is to be understood that he was also speaking to them too. Likewise, by saying that a monk bhikkhu dwells contemplating the body in the body, he also meant any meditator should do the same. Kaye Kayanupasi Viharati means that one dwells contemplating the body in the body, means that the meditator is mindful of material phenomena within his or her own body. Tapi means ardently and enthusiastically. As it says in the Dhamma, Pada, verse 144, like a thoroughbred horse touched by the whip, even so, be strenuous, apino, and zealous, samvego. The right effort of the middle path, which avoids the extremes of sensual indulgence and self-mortification, does not mean a medium effort or a half-hearted effort. It means a strenuous, persistent, and courageous effort that grows 5164 a minute to minute, like a forest fire that burns more and more fair fees and brushwood. The ardent meditator's mind consumes more and more mental defilements, kilesa, at once whenever they arise. Sampajano means clearly comprehending and accompanied by knowledge, i.e. that the purpose of observing the meditation object is to understand its few nature. Painful sensations and negative emotions arising because of them should be contemplated objectively to realize that they are impermanent and arise dependent upon conditions. They do not obey one's wish, and painful feelings are also obviously suffering and unsatisfactory. Satima means mindfully. The term sati means both mindfulness and memory or recollection. The object to be contemplated arises first, immediately followed by awareness of it. There is only a material process, as the object, and a mental process of knowing it. Apart 5164 those two, there is no person or being who knows. Vinaya lok abhijadomanasam means having abandoned covet, ousness, abhija, and sorrow, domanasam, concerning the world, loki. It is vital that a meditator strives with serious intent and commitment to attaining insight, as long as any clinging to the world, such as property, relatives, etc., remains, they will obstruct the meditator's progress. That is why it is esfongli, recommended to leave one's usual residence and attend a refit for a sustained period of at least a few weeks, and preferably longer. It may take at least 3 or 4 days before the meditator stops thinking about household affairs, or, if a monk or nun, to stop thinking about monastic duties. Then, as the refit comes to an end during the last day or two, worldly thoughts and plans may arise again as the meditator plans to return home. Vedanasu Vedananupasi Viharati means that one dwells contemplating feelings in feelings. There are 5 kinds of feelings to be contemplated: painful, pleasant, sorrowful, happy, and newful feelings. It is important that all feelings are faced with equanimity and as above contemplated, ardently, clearly comprehending and mindful, having abandoned covet, ouseness, and grief concerning the world. Chittitsitnupasi Viharati means that one dwells contemplating thoughts, citta, in the same way. When contact between the 5 sense bases and the 5 sense objects occurs, feelings of liking, disliking, or indifference arise. Then the mind door reacts to these sense experiences and thoughts arise regarding them. Memories of sense objects enjoyed before or anticipation of that one plans to enjoy in the future may also arise and stimulate further thoughts. Bad memories or fears regarding unpleased and sense objects may also arise, giving rise to thoughts with fear, aversion, or worry. All such thoughts should be contemplated whenever they occur. Dhammasu Dhammanupasi Viharati means that one dwells contemplating mental objects whenever they occur. The scope of mental objects is extremely broad and is feeded in detail later. It suffices to say here that all such mental objects should be contemplated whenever they occur, ardent, clearly comprehending, and mindful, having abandoned covetousness and grief concerning the world. The Pachi text of this short section should be memorized and could be recited to arouse confidence and enthusiasm before taking up the practice of mindfulness meditation. Udiso Nithito. The introduction is complete. Kayanupasana Anapanapabam. Body contemplation, mindfulness of breathing section, 374. Kathanchapana, Bhikkave, Bhikkhu Kaya Kayanupasi Viharati. Ida, Bhikkave, Bhikkhu Aranyagato va Rukamulagato va Sunyagargato va. Nisidari Palankam Abhujit va Ujum Kayam Panidaya Parimukam Satim. Upatapetva. So Satova Asasati, Satova Pasasati. Diga va asasanto, digam asasamiti pajanati. Digam va pasasanto, digam pasasamiti pajanati. Rasam va asasanto, rasam asasamiti pajanati. Rasam va pasasanto, rasam pasasamiti pajanati. Sabakaya patisam vedi asasisami ti sikkati. Sabakayapsam vedi pasasisami ti sikkati. Pasambayam kaya sankaram asasisami ti sikkati. Pasambayam kaya sankaram pasasami ti sikkati. How, monks, does a monk dwell contemplating the body in the body? Here, a monk, having gone to a forest, to the root of a fifi, or to an empty place, having sat down cross-legged and sitting erect, he establishes mindfulness in 5164 onto his face. He breathes in mindfully. He breathes out mindfully. When breathing in a long breath, he knows, I breathe in a long breath. When breathing in a short breath, he knows, I breathe in a short breath. When breathing out a long breath, he knows, I breathe out a long breath. When breathing out a short breath, he knows, I breathe out a short breath. Experiencing the entire breath I will breathe in, he feigns himself. Experiencing the entire breath I will breathe out, he feigns himself. Calming the bodily formations I will breathe in, he feigns himself. Calming the bodily formations I will breathe out, he feigns himself. Aranyagato va Rukamulagato va Sunyaragato va means that one should go to a quiet place where one will not be disturbed by people or by noise. To establish concentration is no easy task. A beginner in meditation, practice is easily disfacted. Meditation senfis may be full of people, but they are instructed not to speak unless absolutely necessary, and to move about slowly and mindfully with due consideration for others who are developing concentration. If one is brave enough to refit to the forest or an empty place, such as a cave or a cemetery, there are significant benefits to be gained to being away 5164 from other people and in the open air or a natural environment, where there may be genuine dangers. 5164 on wild animals, snakes, poisonous insects, and so forth. It will definitely focus one's attention with a sense of urgency. One should, of course, not recklessly put oneself in danger. If one lacks any kind of knowledge or experience or survival feigning, a teacher should be sought who can guide you in this kind of ascetic practice. Nisidati palankam abhujitva means that one sits cross-legged. Only if one is elderly or disabled should one use a chair or other kind of support. A fit and healthy young or middle-aged person who is unaccustomed to sitting cross-legged for long periods should gradually acquire the necessary skill. It is unnecessary to adopt the full lotus posture that one sees in many Buddha images, with each foot placed on the opposite thigh or in half lotus, with one foot on the ground and the other on the opposite thigh. One can adopt the comfortable Burmese posture with both legs on the ground and one in 51-64 onto the other. The cross-legged posture is the best for sitting, for long periods without discomfort. A 53-64-hour prolonged practice you should find that you can sustain the same posture without moving for at least 1 or 2 hours, if not longer. One should not sit with the feet F8 out in 51-64 unt. Not only is it uncomfortable to sustain for long, it is also regarded as disrespectful to point one's feet towards the Buddha image or a teacher. You may use whatever cushions you need to raise the lower back or to support the knees so that you can sustain a good posture for a long time. Ujjayi Kayam Panidaya means that one should sit up straight. A healthy person should not need to lean against a wall for support. At first, one may find it difficult not to slouch, but as mindfulness and concentration develop, it becomes easier to sit straight. If the body is erect and in a comfortable posture, it will be natural to breathe 51-64 Om the diaphragm rather than 51-64 Om the chest. The breathing will become slow and deep, getting the maximum amount of oxygen into the lungs without any special effort. Paramukam satim upattapetva means to establish mindfulness in 51-64 ont, or literally in 51-64 ont of one's face. So satova asasati, satova pasasati means that one breathes in and out mindfully. All translation of the sutta that I looked at have asasati as breathe in and pasasati as breathe out, which is the opposite of the Pali. Text Society Dictionary. Maurice Walsh notes that the order should possibly be reversed. It does not matter which you noticed first. If you breathe in, you will soon have to breathe out, and vice versa. In calming the breath, which comes later, it seems more natural to breathe in than to relax and out. Digham va asasanto, digham itapajanati, means that one knows a long in-breath, and rasam va asasanto, rasam asasamiti, pajanati, means that one knows a short in-breath. Likewise with long and short out-breaths, one knows them as long or short as appropriate. There should be no attempt to control the breath, as if doing yoga. One should simply relax and breath naturally, observing each breath, however as it occurs. Sabba kaya patisamvedi asasisami ti sikkati means that he feigns himself to be clearly conscious of the whole fetch of the incoming breath, at its beginning, its middle, and at its end. Sabba kaya patisamvedi pasasisamiti sikkati means that he feigns himself to be clearly conscious of the whole fetch of the outgoing breath at its beginning, its middle, and at its end. This meaning comes 5164 Om the commentary, Bhikkhu. Bodhi notes that he thinks it should mean experiencing the entire body. I disagree, as to do so would disfact attention 5164 Om the breath itself to sensations elsewhere in the body, such as the expansion and contraction of the lungs, or the movements of the diaphragm or abdomen. In my opinion, attention should be sustained at the nostrils where the breath enters, neither following it down into the chest or abdomen, nor back up through the windpipe. Follow the simile of the carpenter who, when cutting wood, is aware that the blade of the saw is moving back and forth, but he fixes his attention only at the point where the teeth are cutting the wood so that he can follow a line drawn on the wood in order to cut it accurately. Likewise, remain aware that the breath is coming in and going out, but focus attention just where the breath touches the nostrils of the upper lip or the mouth if your nose is blocked due to a severe cold. Keeping the attention in one place will aid in developing concentration. Pasambayan kaya sankaram asasisami ti sikkati means to breath in while calming the bodily formations, i.e. the breathing while breathing in, and pasambayam kaya sankaram pasasisami ti sikkati means to breathe out while calming the bodily formations, i.e. the breathing, while breathing out. Here, Some conscious confo is made to relax and breathe more slowly and deeply. However, it is important not to do so forcefully, or one will very quickly become fatigued or may become hyperventilated. It may help to take just one XFA deep in breath before relaxing with an XFA, long out breath, but then one should continue breathing normally. If the mind becomes concentrated, the breathing will slow naturally, and if the mind becomes excited, the breath will quicken. Let nature take its own course, with no more than gentle guidance in the right direction. Sayathapi, Bhikkhave, Dakko Bamakaro va Bamakarantavasi va Digham, va Anchanto Digham Anchamiti Pajanati, Rasam va Anchanto Rasam. Anchamiti Pajanati Evameva Ko, Bhikkhave, Bhikkhu Digham va Asasanto. Digham Asasamiti Pajanati, Digham va Pasasanto, Digham Pasasamiti. Pajanati, Rasam va Asasanto. Rasam Asasamiti Pajanati, Rasam va. Pasasanto Rasam Pasasamiti Pajanati. Sabakaya Patisamvedi. Asasasamiti Sikkati. Sabakaya Patisamvedi Pasasamiti Sikkati. Pasambayam Kaya Sankaram Asasasami Sikkati. Pasambayam Kaya Sankaram Pasasasami Sikkati. Just monks, as a skillful turner or a turner's apprentice knows a long pull when a long pull is made, or knows a short pull when a short pull is made. Even so, monks, a monk when breathing in a long inhalation is conscious of breathing in a long inhalation, or breathing out a long exhalation is conscious of breathing out a long exhalation, or breathing in a short inhalation is conscious of breathing in a short inhalation, or breathing out a short exhalation is conscious of breathing out a short exhalation. He feigns himself to be clearly conscious of the whole of the incoming breath at its beginning, its middle, and at its end. He feigns himself to be clearly conscious of the whole of the outgoing breath at its beginning, its middle, and at its end. He feigns himself to calm down the sphang inhalation as he breathes in. He feigns himself to calm down the sphang exhalation as he breathes out. In the time of the Buddha, lathes seem to have been driven by a rope attached to a long bamboo used as a spring. The rope would be pulled to its fullest extent, then released to turn the piece to be carved against the chisel. When only a delicate cut was needed, the rope would only be pulled a short distance for a partial sfoki. The Burma Pitaka Association of Translation again suffices the importance of knowing the entire breath, 5164 the beginning through its middle portion until its end. Iti ajatam vakaya kayanapasi viharati, bahida vakaya kayanapasi, viharati, ajar bahida vakaya kayanapasi viharati. Samudaya damanapasi vakayasmim viharati, vaya damanapasi vakayasmim. Viharati, samudaya vaya damanupasi vakayasmim viharati. Ati kayoti, va panasasati pakupatati yavadeva jnanamataya patisarimataya. Anisitoka viharati, nacha kinchi loke upadhyati. Evampi ko, bhikkhave, bhikkhu kaye kayanupasi viharati. Thus, he dwells contemplating the body internally, his own body, or he dwells contemplating the body externally, the body of another, or he dwells contemplating both. He dwells contemplating origination factors in the body, or he dwells contemplating dissolution factors in the body, or he dwells contemplating origination and dissolution factors in the body. Or his mindfulness is established with the thought, the body exists just to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness. He dwells independent and clings to nothing in the world. Thus, too, a monk dwells contemplating the body in the body. The commentary explains internally and externally as one's own body, and that of another. Unless one has developed the psychic powers, one will only be able to know the breath of others by inference. While contemplating the in-breaths and out-breaths, he is aware that they arise and pass away. His awareness is established that the body exists, but that is not a being, nor a person, neither a woman nor a man, not a self, nor anything pertaining to a self. He does not regard it as I or mine. Thus, he clings to nothing in the world. The mindfulness of breathing section is complete. Anapanapabam nithitam, kayanupasana iriapatapabam. Body contemplation, 4 postures section, 375. Puna kaparam, bhikkhave, bhikkhu gachanto va gachamiti pajanati, thito va hitomiti pajanati, nisino va nisinomiti pajanati, sayano va sayanomiti pajanati, yatha yatha va panasa kayo panihito hoti, tatha tatha nam pajanati. Again, monks when walking, a monk knows, I am walking, or when. standing, he knows, I am standing. Or when sitting, he knows, I am sitting. Or when lying down, he knows I am lying down, or however his body is. Disposed, he knows it. Although it is said in conventional language, I am going, I am sitting, I am standing, or I am lying down, one's attention should be focused on the physical phenomena of going, sitting, standing, or lying down, and not merely on the idea of the posture. Actions and movements should be done as slowly as possible, paying close attention to the movements of the limbs. If one notes only as walking, walking, the mind may wander easily. This is even more obvious when standing still. The balance can only be maintained by constant awareness and 5164 equant small movements of the muscles in the legs, feet, and back. A53-64, only half an hour of standing, one will feel stiffness in the limbs. Of the four postures, standing is the hardest to maintain for long periods. In noting the posture of sitting, pay attention to the position of the head, shoulders, arms, hands, and legs. If you wish to scratch an itch, do not move your hand at once, but patiently note the sensation until it disappears. If it becomes unbearable, you may scratch it, but in doing so, move the hand slowly while noting all actions needed to do so. If the lower limbs become stiff or painful, again, do not uncross them at once. Patiently note the unpleasant sensations, investigating them systematically to see if they are permanent or impermanent. Do they change their position or their specific characteristics? Do you experience the pain or discomfort as hardness, burning, throbbing, or aching? Painful sensations are the best 5164 ion of a meditator. Why? Because they lead to increased effort, deeper concentration, and insight into the three general characteristics, which are impermanence, unsatisfactoriness or suffering, and not self or not subject to one's wish or confal. Note painful sensations that arise in sitting meditation for as long as you can bear them, not to make them go away, but to understand them as they really are. If you are in agony, you may move your limbs. Mindfully, adjust your sitting posture to relieve the severe pain, then continue to note as before. If the painful sensations reappear, do not change your sitting posture again, but get up 5164 sitting and practice walking meditation. Meditating while lying down is not recommended during the daytime, as you may quickly fall asleep. However, if you are sick, you may have no choice but to practice in the lying posture. At the end of the day, when it is time to sleep, lay down on your right side and be mindful of the entire body. 5164 head to foot, sweeping your attention down 5164 where the head touches the pillow to the shoulders, elbows, hips, knees, and feet. Then, start again 5164 the top of the head. I find that it helps to maintain a stable posture by placing the right hand on the L 5364 shoulder and the Li 5364 hand on the right elbow. A5364, finding a posture that is comfortable for you. Maintain it for as long as possible without changing it until you fall asleep. If you stay awake for a long time, and if painful sensations should arise, note them as explained above for sitting meditation. If you can note them bravely without changing your posture, you may realize the knowledge of arising and passing away. If you master this skill of noting while lying, down until you fall asleep, you may find yourself in the very same posture at the first moment that you awake in the morning. Resume noting as before, and if it is time to get up, mindfully note all actions and movements involved. In rising 5164 on the bed, going to the bathroom, getting dressed, and so forth. In this way, be mindful of the various movements of the limbs and the posture of the body continuously without missing anything. Iti ajatam va kaya kayanapasi viharati, bahida va kaya kayanapasi, viharati, ajata bahida va kaya kayanapasi viharati, samudaya. Dhammanupasi va kayasmim viharati, vaya dhammanupasi va kayasmim. Viharati, samudaya vaya dhammanupasi va kayasmim viharati. Athikayoti, va panasasati pakupati dahoti yavadeva jnana mataya pasati mataya anisito kaviharati, nacha kinchi lok upadhyati, evampiko bhikkhave, bhikkhu kaye kayanupasi viharati. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Iriyapathapabam nithitam. The four postures section is complete. Kayanupasana sampajajanpabhavam. Body contemplation, clear comprehension section. 3 and 76. Punakaparam, bhikkhave, bhikkhu abhikante patikante sampajanakari. Hoti, alokita vilokite sampajanakari hoti, saminjite pasarite sampajanakari. Hoti, sangatipadachi varadaran sampajanakari hoti, asite pite kayite. Sayat sampajanakari hoti, ukarapasavakami sampajanakari hoti, gate. Thait nisan sute jagarite basit tunibhav sampajanakari hoti. Again, monks. A monk, in going and coming, practices clear comprehension. In looking ahead or to the side, he practices clear comprehension. In bending and fetching the limbs, he practices clear comprehension. In carrying the double robe and alms bowl and wearing the robes, he practices clear comprehension. In eating, drinking, chewing, and tasting, he practices clear comprehension. In defecating and urinating, he practices clear comprehension. In walking, standing, or sitting, in falling asleep and waking. Up, in speaking or remaining silent, he practices clear comprehension. Going and coming means when going into the village for alms and returning a 5364 or the alms round. It could also mean walking back and forth on the walking path. A meditator should practice clear comprehension when going to the dining hall or returning to his or her room. For monks, the FIP, into the local village or town for alms food, is a time when the mind is liable to get distracted by sights and sounds. A monk should walk slowly with the eyes downcast, paying attention to his deportment and how he carries the alms bowl and wears the robes. The mealtime is also a great danger for the meditator. One may see non-meditators busily going about their business, and their senses will also be assaulted by many smells and tastes. When fetching the arms to receive or take food, and when putting it into one's bowl or onto one's plate, care should be taken not to spill food or to make a noise. While eating the meal, monks and meditators should be mindful of all actions and movements involved in taking food, noting carefully putting food into the mouth, tasting it, chewing it, and swallowing it. An unmindful person, when taking food, eats 3 morsels at once, i.e., they have one in their mouth, another on the spoon waiting to go in, while their eyes are looking at what they might take to eat next. A meditator should eat only 1 morsel at a time. When looking to see what to eat next, one should note as looking, seeing. When taking the food with a spoon, one should note as taking, taking. When bringing the foot to the mouth, one should note as bringing, bringing. When putting the food into the mouth, one should note as putting, putting. When chewing the morsel, one should note as chewing, chewing. On tasting the food, whether it is sweet or sour, spicy or delicious, one should note it as tasting, tasting. Finally, one should not as swallowing. Only then should the meditator look to see what he or she will take to eat for the next morsel. This practice of 1 morsel at a time is very difficult to maintain, but it should be done to sustain mindfulness and develop concentration. Otherwise, all kinds of unwholesome thoughts about the meal may arise and disturb the meditator's practice A5364 airwards. Sometime A5364 taking the meal, the meditator will have to visit the bathroom to urinate or defecate. This, too, must be done with mindfulness and clear comprehension, taking care to clean oneself properly, and cleaning the toilet to leave it ready for the next person to use. Walking, standing, and sitting has already been described fully under the 4 postures, but here too one should practice clear comprehension of one's intention when going and coming or remaining still. A meditator should usually remain silent, but if there is a reason to speak, one must speak. Then one should say no more than is necessary to communicate. When asked by the meditation teacher about one's practice, a meditator should just report what happened in simple terms without speculating about the meaning of one's experiences, nor going off at a tangent about other things that are unrelated to it. While remaining silent, to listen to the replies given, a meditator should not interrupt or ask a question until the teacher has finished. Iti ajatamva, evampi ko bhikkhave, bhikkhu kaye kayanupasi viharati. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Sampajanapabam nititam. The clear comprehension section is complete. Kayanupasana patikulamanasakarapaba. Body contemplation, attention to repulsiveness section. 377. Puna kaparam bhikkhave piku imameva kayam udam padatala adho. Kesamataka takaparyantam puram nanapaka asuchino. Pakaveki ati amasmim kai kesa loma nakadanta tako mamsam. Naru ati minja vakam. Hadayam yakanam kilomakam pihakam. Papasam Anta antagunam udaryam mathalungam 1 pitta. Semham pubo lohitam sedo medo, asu vasa keo singanika laska mutanti. Again, monks, a monk reflects on this very body encased in skin and full of various foul things. 5164 Om the soles of the feet to the hairs on top of the head. In this body are head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, 2 flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, 3 heart, liver, membranes, spleen, lungs, large intestine, small intestine, stomach, facies, brain, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, saliva, snot, synovial fluid, and urine. The Visuddhimagga says that these must be recited verbally in groups, in forward and reverse order. The first pentad in forward and reverse order, then the first decad in reverse order, then the third pentad in forward and reverse order, then the first 553-64 een in reverse order, then the fourth pentad in forward and reverse order, etc. Finally, all are recited in reverse order: urine, synovial fluid, snot, saliva, grease, tears, fat, sweat, blood, pus, phlegm, bile, brain, facies, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, lungs, spleen, membranes, liver, heart, kidneys, bone marrow, bones, sinews, flesh, skin, teeth, nails, body hairs, head hairs. When a candidate for the going forth has his head shaved, he is given a handful of hair to contemplate while reciting the skin pentad: head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin. This group is easy to visualize since these body parts are visible to the naked eye. Not everyone will have seen the internal body organs, but when head hairs are examined in the hand, their FU nature becomes clear. A53-64 are memorizing them all in forward and reverse order. The recitation should be done mentally. A53-64 are thoroughly memorizing the body parts. Through verbal and mental recitation, one should direct one's attention to discerning their foul characteristics through visualizing them in situ. 4. Further details, please refer to the Visuddhimagga, which describes each of the 32 body parts in detail and how to proceed to absorption. Sayathapi, Bhikkhave, Ubatama Putoti Purananavita Sadanyasa, Sayathidam Salinam Vihinam Muganam Masanan Tilanam Tandulana, Tamenam Kakuma Puriso Munsitva Pakave Kea, Ime Sali, Ime, Vihi ime muga, ime masa, ime tila, ime tandulati. Evamevako, bhikkave. Bhikkhu imameva kayam udam padatala adho kesamataka. Takapariantam purananapakarasa asuchino pakavekati. At thee, imasmim kaya kesaloma, mutanti. It is, monks, like a bag with an opening at each end, full of various kinds of grain, such as hill paddy, green gram, cowpea, sesame, and husked rice, and a man with sound eyes, having opened it, should examine, and reflect on the contents thus: this is hill paddy, this is lowland paddy, this is green gram, this is cowpea, this is sesame, this is husked rice even. So, monks, a monk examines and reflects on this very body, 5164, the soles, of the feet to the top of the hair on the head, enclosed by the skin and full of manifold impurities. There in this body, hair of the head, urine. Adi ajatamva, evampi ko, bhikkave, bhikkhu kaya kayanapasi, viharati. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Patikula manasikara pabam nittitam. The attention to repulsiveness section is complete. Kayanupasana dhamanasikara paba, body contemplation. Attention to the elements section. 378. Puna kapara, bhikkave, bhikkhu imameva kayam yathathitam. Yathapanihitam datuso pakavekati, at the imasmim kaye. Pathavitu apodatu tejodatu vayodatu ti. Again, monks, a monk reflects on the elements in this very body. However, it is disposed. In this body are the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the wind element. The earth element means solidity. Hardness and so 53-64-ness are both characteristics of the earth element. The water element means fluidity or cohesion. The fire element means temperature. Hot and cold are both manifestations of the fire element. The wind element means motion, pressure, or vibration. Earth, water, fire, and air are the fundamental material, phenomena, not literally earth, water, fire, and air. Even a solid, bone-dry rock contains the element of cohesion. Otherwise, all of the molecules would collapse in a heap of dust. Even liquid water contains the earth element, as anyone who has dived 5164 on the 10-meter board will tell you that it is hard enough to cause serious injury if you land badly. Even solid carbon dioxide contains the fire element, and it will boil if Le5364 at room temperature. A simile of making bread may make the meaning clearer. Dry flour manifests the solid qualities of the earth element. When water is added, the dough becomes sticky, which is the element of cohesion. As the dough is kneaded with a vigorous motion, the stickiness disappears and the SO5364-ness of the earth element becomes more obvious. When the dough is baked, the fire element changes the dough into bread when lightness and SO5364-ness become more obvious. The four elements are present at all times in all material phenomena. Even hydrogen gas can be compressed to a liquid, and the element of temperature, though very weak, is still present in liquid hydrogen. It is not quite at absolute 0 degrees. Sayathapi, Bhikkhave, Dako Gogatako va Gogatakantavasi Vagavim. Vadhit Vakatu Mahapathe Bilaso Vibhajitno Asa, Evameva Ko, Bhikkhave. Bhikkhu Imameva Kayam Yathatitam Yathapanihidam Datuso. Pakavekati, Ati Imasmim Kaye Pathavidatu Apatu Tejo Datu, Vayotuti. Just monks, as a skillful butcher or a butcher's apprentice, having slaughtered a cow and cut it up into portions, sits at a crossroads. Similarly, monks, a monk reflects on the four elements in this very body, however is disposed in this body are the elements of earth, water, fire, and air. This meditation object is described in the Visuddhimagga 1, where it is called the defining of the elements, Ketudhatu Vavathan, which it says means paying attention to the elements, Dharmanasikara. Just as a butcher or his apprentice does not think that he is selling a cow, but only pieces of meat, a monk does not think that the four elements are a person, a man, or a living being. The Masi meditation method uses this body contemplation, as it is suitable for one developing insight. As soon as the meditator is able to discern the air element in the movements of the abdomen or limbs, insight into the characteristic of not-self can arise. Long before self-view is removed, entirely by the attainment of SF theme winning, the meditator can realize, through analytical knowledge of body and mind, knowledge by discerning, conditionality, or knowledge of comprehension, that there is no person or being, self or soul, but just physical phenomena and mental phenomena that are aware of them. As it says in the Progress of Insight, at the moment of breathing in, there is just the rising movement of the abdomen and the knowing of the movement, but there is no self besides. A meditator should investigate painful feelings without changing the posture whenever they occur. What kind of sensation is it? Is it hardness? Is it a burning? Is it throbbing? These are manifestations of the elements, of earth, fire, and air respectively. The water element is not directly discernible. Sweat may be experienced as cold, which is the weak fire element. If one is able to discern the primary elements in painful feelings, perceptions of pain or discomfort, and aversion to unpleasant feelings will be overcome. Sensations will be seen as they fully are, as bare phenomena, which are not a person or self, not me nor mine, and also arising dependent on conditions, disappearing when conditions cease, anicca, and not subject to anyone's confall, anatta. They will rightly be regarded as oppressive or suffering, dukkha, for these reasons. Idiajita, avampiko, bhikkhave, bhikkhu kayakayanupasi, viharati. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Dhatu manasi karapabam nithitam. The attention to the element section is complete kayanupasana navasavatka pabab. Body contemplation, 9 cemetery objects section, 379. Puna kapara, bhikkhave, bhikkhu sayathapi pasaya sariram sivatikaya. Chaditam akahamatam vad vihamatam vad tihamatam va udumatakam, vinilakam vipubakajatam. So imameva kayam upasaharati, ayampi, kokayo evam damo evam bhavi evamanatitoti. Again, monks, if a monk should see a body in the cemetery, 1, 2, or 3 days dead, bloated blue or black in color and festering, he compares his own body to it. This very body too is of the same nature. It will become like that, and it has not transcended that. Aidi ajatam va. Evampiko, bhikkhave, bhikkhu kayanupasi, viharati. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Puna kaparam, bhikkhave, bhikkhu sayathapi pasaya sariram, sivathakaya chajitam kakehi vakajamanam, kulalehi vakajamanam, gijehi vakajamanam kankehi vakajamanam sunakehi va, kajamanam vayagehi vakajamanam dupihi vakajamanam singalehi, vakajamanam vividhehi vapanakajehi kajamanam. So imameva, kayam upasarati, ayampi kokayo evam damo evam bhavi, evamanatitoti. Again, monks, if a monk should see a body in the cemetery, being devoured by crows, being devoured by hawks, being devoured by vultures, being devoured by herons, being devoured by dogs, being devoured by tigers, being devoured by leopards, being devoured by jackals, or being devoured by various kinds of worms, he compares his own body to it. This very body, too, is of the same nature. It will become like that, and it has not transcended that. Idiajatamva, evampiko, bhikkhave, bhikkhu kayanupasi, viharati. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Puna kapara, bhikkhave, bhikkhu sayathapi pasaya sariram savathikaya, chaditam athikasakalikam samam salohitam narusambandam. Athikas kalikam nimam salohitam akitam narusambandam. Athika sankalikam apagatamam salohitam narusambandam. Athikani apagata. Sambandani disavidisa vikitani, anyena hatatikam anyena. Padatikam anyena gopvakatikam anyena jankatikam anyena. Uruthikam anyena katitikam anyena fasukatikam anyena pithikam. Anyena kandatikam anyena givatikam anyena hanukatikam anyena. Dantatikam anyena sisakataham. So imameva kayam upasam harati. Ayampi kokayo ivam dhammo ivam bhavi evamanatitoti. Again, monks, if a monk should see a body in the cemetery reduced to a skeleton held together by tendons, with some flesh and blood still adhering to it, reduced to a skeleton held together by tendons, blood besmeared, fleshless, reduced to a skeleton still held together by tendons, without flesh and blood, reduced to loose bones scattered in all directions. At one place, bones of a hand, at another place, bones of a foot, at another place, ankle bones, at another place, shin bones, at another place, thigh bones, at another place, hip bones, at another place, rib bones, at another place, spinal bones, at another place, shoulder bones, at another place, neck bones, at another place, the jawbone, at another place, the teeth, at another place, the skull. He compares his own body to it. This very body, too, is of the same nature. It will become like that, and it has not transcended that. Aidi ajatamva, evampiko, bhikkhave, bhikkhu kayanupasi, viharati. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Puna kaparam, bhikkhu sayathapi pasaya sariram sivathakaya, chaditam atthakani setani sankavanapatibagani, atthakani punjakitani, terovasikani, atthakani putini kunnakajatani. So imame vakayam. Upasamharati, ayampiko kayo evandamo evambavi evamanatitoti. Iti ajatam vakaya kayanupasi viharati, bahida vakaya kayanupasi. Viharati ajata bahida vakaya kayanupasi viharati. Samudaya damanupasi vakayasmim viharati, vayadamanupasi va. Kayasmim viharati, samudaya vayadamanupasi va kayasmim viharati. Ati kayoti va panasasati pakapathita hoti yavadeva nyanaya patisidamataya anisito ka viharati, nacha kinchi loke upadiyati. Evampiko, bhikkhave, bhikkhu kayanupasi viharati. Again, monks, if a monk should see a body in the cemetery, reduced to bleached bones of conch-like color, reduced to bones more than a year old, lying in a heap, reduced to rotted bones, crumbling to dust, he compares his own body to it. This very body, too, is of the same nature. It will become like that, and it has not transcended that. These 9 cemetery contemplations are difficult to practice. It is hard to find dead bodies even in Asian countries where Buddhism is currently practiced. It seems that in the Buddha's time, dead bodies were wrapped in white cloths and discarded in cemeteries on the edge of the forest. Wild animals would come and eat the remains, and the monks would gather the soiled cloths to wash, dye, and make into robes. It was ecological, as no firewood was needed, no digging of graves was required, and the cemetery grounds were of no value to farmers. They were also lonely places where no one would go for fear of ghosts, and so suitable for reclusive monks or nuns as long as they were courageous. The best we can manage nowadays, if a devout lay follower or a monastic dies, is to have the body laid out in the monastery for a few days. Public health regulations probably won't allow us to keep it until it decays completely. In any case, this meditation method is unsuitable for anyone who might panic for fear of ghosts or wild animals. It is a difficult ascetic practice, suitable mostly for well-feigned forest monks like Tang Pulu Sayadaw or Ajahn Mun, who were austere monks. A meditator should select a meditation object that suits his or her, temperament of the 14 body contemplations taught in this discourse, one should select one as the primary object, such as mindfulness of breathing, attention to the elements or the repulsive parts of the body, then. Augment that with clear comprehension of all daily activities and awareness of the four postures. With mindfulness firmly established on the body, the meditation objects should be extended to include feelings, thoughts, and mental objects. Begin with whatever is the most obvious, then gradually. Penetrate what was not apparent at first until becoming aware of the most subtle objects and the factors leading to their arising and disappearance. Whenever the secondary objects, such as feelings, thoughts, or mental objects, such as one of the five hindrances becomes predominant, give it your full attention until it is abandoned before returning to mindfulness of the body with the primary object or objects. Navasavathikapabam Nithitam. The 9 cemetery contemplations section is complete. Kudasa Kayanupasana Nithida. The 14 contemplations of the body are complete. Vedananupasana, contemplation of feelings, 380. Kathanchapana, Bhikkhave, Bhikkhu Vedanasu Vedananupasi Viharati. Ida, Bhikkhave, Bhikkhu Sukham Va Vedanam Vedayamano, Sukham Vedanam, Vedayamiti Pajanati, Dukham Va Vedanam Vedayamano Dukkam, Vedanam Vedayamiti Pajanati. Adukamasukam Va Vedanam, Vedayamano, Adukamasukam Vedanam Vedayamiti Pajanati. Samisam, Va Sukham Vedanam Vedayamano, Samisam Sukham Vedanam Vedayamiti. Pajanati, Niramisam Va Sukham Vedanam Vedayamano, Niramisam Sukham, Vedanam Vedayamiti Pajanati. Samisam Va Dukkam Vedanam Vedayamano. Samisam Dukkam Vedanam Vedayamiti Pajanati, Niramisam Va Dukkam, Vedanam Vedayamano. Niramisam Dukkam Vedanam Vedayamiti Pajanati. Samisam Va Adukkamasukam Vedanam Vedayamano. Samisam Adukkamasukam Vedanam Vedayamiti Pajanati, Niramisam Va. Adukkamasukam Vedanam Vedayamano, Niramisam Adukkamasukam, Vedanam Vedayamiti Pajanati. Idi Ajatam Va Vedanasu Vedananupasi, Viharati, Bahida Va Vedanasu Vedananupasi Viharati. How, monks, does a monk dwell contemplating feelings? Here, a monk, when feeling a pleasant feeling, he knows, I feel a pleasant feeling. When feeling a painful feeling, he knows, I feel a painful feeling. When feeling a newful feeling, he knows, I feel a newful feeling. When feeling a pleasant sensual feeling, he knows, I feel a pleasant sensual feeling. When feeling a pleasant non-sensual feeling, he knows, I feel a pleasant non-sensual feeling. When feeling an unpleasant sensual feeling, he knows, I feel an unpleasant sensual feeling. When feeling an unpleasant non-sensual feeling, he knows, I feel an unpleasant non-sensual feeling. When feeling a newful sensual feeling, he knows, I feel a newful sensual feeling. When feeling a newful non-sensual feeling, he knows, I feel a newful non-sensual feeling. Sensual feelings connected with lust, greed, or affection are obviously a danger for a meditator, as are feelings of anger, rage, and haft. The extremely pleasant non-sensual feelings arising 5164 joy, faith, or tranquility are also a danger, as are feelings connected with aversion to discomfort, or disappointment with lack of special insights. All feelings should be contemplated in the light of the 3 characteristics. They are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. Although pleasant, non-sensual feelings are obviously not suffering in the usually understood sense of the word. Because they are conditioned, they inevitably change and disappear. Therefore, if they are clung to as pleasant, lasting, or as mine, when they do change and disappear, suffering will follow. Unpleasant feelings of disappointment or dejection should be noted until they too are understood, and attachment to them is relinquished. Ajata bahid va vedanasu vedanupasi viharati. Samudayadama. Nupasi va vedanasu viharati. Vayadamanupasi va vedanasu viharati. Samudaya vayadamanupasi va vedanasu viharati. Ati vedanati va panasa sati pakapatita hoti yavadeva jnana mataya patisatimataya. Anasito ka viharati, nakakinchi loki upadiyati. Evampiko, Bhikkave Bhikkhu Vedanasu Vedananupasi Viharati. The commentary explains internally and externally as one's own body, and that of another. Unless one has developed the psychic powers, one will only be able to know the feelings of others by inference. While contemplating feelings, he is aware that they arise and pass away. His awareness is established that feelings exists, but that they are not a being nor a person. neither a woman nor a man, not a self nor anything pertaining to a self. He does not regard feelings as I or mine. Thus he clings to nothing in the world. Vedanupassana Nitira. The contemplation of feelings is complete. Cittanupassana. Contemplation of thoughts. 381. Kathanchapana. Bhikkave. Bhikkhu chitte cittanupasi viharati. Ida. Bhikkave. Bhikkhu saragam vachittam. Saragam cinti pajanati vitaragam. Vachitam vitaragam sittanti pajanati. Sadosam vachitam sadosam sittanti. Pajanati vitadosam vachitam vitadosam sittanti pajanati. Samohava. Citam samoham sittanti pajanati. Vitamoham vachitam vitamoham. Sittanti pajanati. Sankitam vachitam sankitam sittanti pajanati. Vikitam vachitam vikitam sittanti pajanati. Mahagatam vachitam. Mahagatam siti pajanati. Amahagam vachitagatam sittanti pajanati. Sa uttara vatsitam, sa uttaram sittanti pajanati, anuttaram vasitam, anuttaram sittanti pajanati. Samahitam vatsitam, samahitam sittanti pajanati, asamahitam vasitam, asamahitam sittanti pajanati. Vimutam vachitam, vimut sittanti pajanati. Avimutva, sitam avimutam sittanti pajanati. Again, monks, how does a monk dwell contemplating thoughts and thoughts? Here, monks, when a thought with lust one is present, he knows. A lustful thought is present. When a thought 5164e, 5164 lust is present, he knows. A thought 5164e, 5164 lust is present. When a thought with anger is present, he knows. A thought with anger too is present. When a thought 5164e, 54 anger is present, he knows. A thought 5164e, 5164 anger is present. When a deluded thought is present, he knows. A deluded thought 3 is present. When an undiluted thought is present, he knows an undiluted thought is present. When a lazy, confacted mind is present, he knows a lazy mind is present. When a disfacted, restless mind is present, he knows a disfacted mind is present. When a low 6164 sit mind is present, he knows a low 6164 mind is present. When a non-low 6164 mind is present, he knows a non-low 6164 mind is present. When an inferior mind is present, he knows an inferior mind is present. When a superior mind is present, he knows a superior mind is present. When a composed one mind is present, he knows a composed mind is present. When an uncomposed mind is present, he knows an uncomposed mind is present. When a liberated two mind is present, he knows a liberated mind is present. When an unliberated mind is present, he knows an unliberated mind is present. In brief, whatever thoughts arises during meditation should be known as they really are. Mindfulness should be maintained to avoid getting carried away by thoughts, whether positive or negative. Joyful, happy, and serene states of mind will develop if the meditator continues to practice diligently. Nevertheless, if progress seems slow, the meditator becomes pessimistic or depressed and is reluctant to continue. If both positive and negative thoughts are noted whenever they occur, the mind will remain equanimous and progress will be steady. Idi ajatam va chide tsenupasi viharati, bahida va chide sitanupasi, viharati, ajata bahida va chite chitanupasi viharati. Samudaya, damanupasi va chittasmim viharati, vayadamanupasi va chittasmim, viharati, samudaya vayadamanupasi va chittasmim viharati. Ati. Chittanti va panasasati pachupatita hoti yavadev jnanamataya. Patisatimataya anisitocha viharati. Nacha kinchi loke upadiyati. Evampiko. Bhikkave. Bhikkhu chitte chittanapasi viharati. The commentary explains internally and externally as one's own body and that of another. Unless one has developed the psychic powers, one will only be able to know the thoughts of others by inference. While contemplating thoughts, he is aware that they arise and pass away. His awareness is established that thoughts exists, but that they are not a being nor a person, neither a woman nor a man, not a self nor anything pertaining to a self. He does not regard thoughts as I or mine, thus he clings to nothing in the world. Cittanupassana nettita. The contemplation of thoughts is complete. Dhammanupassana nivarnapabha. Contemplation of mental objects, hindrances section 382. Kathanchapana bhikkave, bhikkhu dhammesu dhammanupasi viharati. Ida bhikkave, bhikkhu dhammesu dhammanupasi viharati painchasu, nivarnesu. Kathanchapana bhikkave, bhikkhu dhammesu dhammanupasi viharati painchasu nivarnesu. How Monks, does a monk dwell contemplating mental objects in? Mental objects? Here, monks, a monk dwell contemplating mental objects in the five hindrances. How? Monks, does a monk dwell contemplating mental objects in the five hindrances? Herein, mental objects or phenomena, Dhamma, includes a wide range of objects for contemplation divided into sections on the five hindrances, the five aggregates, the six sense faculties, the seven factors of enlightenment, and the four noble effluths. The commentary introduces this section by saying that contemplation of the body dealt with the aggregate of materiality, contemplation of feelings dealt with the aggregate of feelings, and contemplation of thought dealt with the aggregate of consciousness. This section on contemplation of mental objects, Dhammanupassana, deals with the aggregates of perception and mental formations. Ida bhikkhus hutan va ajatam kamachanda ati me, ajatam kamachandoti pajanati, asantam va ajatam kamachandam. Nati me ajatam kamachandoti pajanati, yathaka anupanasa. Kamachandasa upado hoditancha pajanati, yathaka upanasa. Kamachandasa pahana hoditancha pajanati, yathaka pahinasa. Kamachandasa ayatim anupado hoditancha pajanati. Here, monks, when sensual desire is present, a monk knows sensual desire is present. When sensual desire is absent, he knows sensual desire is absent. He also knows how the unarisen sensual desire comes to arise, how the arisen sensual desire comes to be abandoned, and how the abandoned sensual desire does not arise again. Similes for the five hindrances, starting with sensual desire, are given in the Samyutta Nikaya 1. When water is colored by yellow, blue, or crimson dye, one is unable to see the reflection of one's face. Likewise, when the mind is sullied by sensual desire, one is unable to see one's own benefit. Further similes for the other four hindrances are given below. The commentary on the Satipatthana Sutta says that sensual desire arises due to unwise attention, ayoniso manasikara, and refers to the Samyutta Nikaya 1, where the Buddha said, "There is, monks, the sign of beauty, subhanamidam." Paying unwise attention to that and cultivating it is the nufament for the arising of unarisen sensual desire and for the growth and increase of the sensual desire that has already arisen. The commentary then says that sensual desire is abandoned by wise attention, yoniso, manasikara, again referring to the same discourse where the Buddha said, "There is, monks, the sign of repulsiveness, asubhanamitta." Paying wise attention to that and cultivating it is the nufament for the non-arising of the unarisen sensual desire and for the abandoning of the arisen sensual desire. Therefore, when practicing Satipatthana meditation, if sensual desire arises and if one is unable to expel it by mindful noting, one should pay attention to the sign of repulsiveness by contemplating the 32 body parts. In the Masif edition, this is referred to as one of the four protections. When mindfulness has been restored and sensual desire has been expelled, one can resume noting as usual. Santava ajatam bayapadam, ati me ajatam bayapadoti pajanati. Asantam va ajatam bayapadam, nati me ajatam bayapadoti pajanati. Yathacha anupanasa bayapadasa upado hoti taincha pajanati. Yathaka, upanasa bayapadasa pahanam hoti taincha pajanati. Yathaka pahinasa, bayapadasa ayatim anupado hoti taincha pajanati. Here, monks, when ill will is present, a monk knows ill will is present. When ill will is absent, he knows ill will is absent. He also knows how the unarisen ill will comes to arise, how the arisen ill will comes to be, abandoned, and how the abandoned ill will does not arise again. When water is on a fire, steaming and boiling, one is unable to see the reflection of one's face. Likewise, when the mind is overcome by ill will, one is unable to see one's own benefit. Here, the Satipatthana Sutta commentary again refers to the Ahara Sutta, saying that the hindrance of ill will arises due to unwise attention. There is, monks, the sign of aversion, paticcanamitta, paying unwise attention to. That and cultivating it is the nufiment for the arising of unarisen ill will, and for the growth and increase of the ill will that has already arisen. The commentary then says that ill will is abandoned by wise attention, yoniso, manasikara, again referring to the same discourse. There is, monks, the liberation of the heart by loving kindness, meditator vimutti. Paying wise attention to that and cultivating it is the nufiment for the non-arising of the unarisen ill will and for the abandoning of the arisen ill will. When practicing Satipatthana meditation, if ill will arises, and if one is unable to expel it by mindful noting, one should pay attention to the liberation of the heart by cultivating loving kindness. Failing that, one should abide in equanimity by reflecting that all beings are the owners of their actions and will inherit the results of their own actions. When mindfulness has been restored and ill will has been expelled, one can resume noting as usual. Santa ajatam thinamidam, ati me ajatam thinamidanti, pajanati, asantam va ajatam thinamidam, nati me ajatam, thinamidanti pajanati, yathacha anupanasa thinamidasa upado. Hoti tancha pajanati, yathaka upanasa thinamidasa pahanam hoti. Tancha pajanati, yathaka pahinasa thinamidasa ayatim anupado hoti. Tancha pajanati. Here, monks, when sloth and torpor is present, a monk knows sloth and torpor is present. When sloth and torpor is absent, he knows sloth and torpor is absent. He also knows how the unarisen sloth and torpor comes to arise, how the arisen sloth and torpor comes to be abandoned, and how the abandoned sloth and torpor does not arise again. When water is covered by weeds, one is unable to see the reflection of one's face. Likewise, when the mind is overcome by sloth and torpor, one is unable to see one's own benefit. Here, the Satipatthana Sutta commentary again refers to the ahara, sutta saying that the hindrance of sloth and torpor arises due to unwise attention. There is, monks, discontent, arati, lethargy, tandi, lazy fetch, eyeing, vijambita, drowsiness a 64 ear meals, bada samado. Paying unwise. Attention to these and cultivating them is the newfament for the arising of unarisen sloth and torpor, and for the growth and increase of the sloth and torpor that have already arisen. The commentary then says that sloth and torpor is abandoned by wise attention, again referring to the same discourse, where the Buddha said, there is, monks, stirring up energy, surviving, and exertion. Paying wise attention to those and cultivating them is the newfament for the non-arising of the unarisen sloth and torpor, and for the abandoning of the arisen sloth and torpor, taught 1. 6 things are recommended for the abandoning of sloth and torpor. 1. Knowing when one has had enough to eat. 2. Changing of body posture, i.e. walking, standing, sitting, and lying down as appropriate. 3. The perception of light. 4. Dwelling in the open. 5. Good 5164 ayanship. And 6. Suitable conversation 5164 from time to time. 1. Eating only once a day may be enough for some, while others may need 2 meals. Meditators don't usually take more than that. Whatever one's usual practice is, one should not eat to one's full satisfaction, but just enough to avoid being famished later. 2. Only sitting for the entire day is not healthy. One should alternate sitting, meditation with walking meditation. Sitting still for long periods is good for concentration, but one should sit correctly to avoid discomfort and to remain alert. If drowsiness sets in, get up and practice walking, meditation. Only walking is also not good. If fatigue de 5364 excessive, walking one may need to lie down to rest the body, as the Venerable Ananda de 5364 walking the entire night before the first Buddhist council. Only then did his spiritual faculties become balanced. A meditator should therefore be aware and adjust the periods of walking and sitting as appropriate. Walking a 5364 ere the meal is recommended to dispel any drowsiness before sitting. Lying down may be used during hot weather, but it is generally unsuitable for meditation during the day. Only at the end of a long day's meditation should the meditator lie down mindfully to rest until falling asleep. 3. One may open one's eyes and look at a source of light such as the sun, shining through a window, or at night, the moon and stars. 4. Dwelling in the open is very effective to dispel sleepiness. In the forest, one is surrounded by the sounds of creeping things, by the movements of the leaves in the wind, and by the sounds of animals, etc. It is hard to fall asleep unless one is genuinely tired. 5. Staying together with other diligent meditators will encourage you to be diligent too. 6. When the opportunity arises, listening to the Dhamma 5164 Om one's teacher, or having suitable Dhamma discussions will arouse effort and enthusiasm for the practice. Santa va ajatam udaka kukucham, ati mi ajatam udacha, kukuchanti pajanati, asantam va ajatam udaka kukucham, nati, mi ajata kudapajanati, yathacha upanasa, udaka kukuchasa upado hoti tancha pajanati, yathacha upanasa. Udaka kukuchasa pahanam hoti taincha pajanati, yathaka pahinasa. Udaka kukukasa ayatim anupado hoti taincha pajanati. Here, monks, when restlessness and remorse is present, a monk knows. Restlessness and remorse are present. When restlessness and remorse are absent, he knows. Restlessness and remorse are absent. He also knows how the unarisen restlessness and remorse come to arise, how the arisen restlessness and remorse come to be abandoned, and how the abandoned restlessness and remorse does not arise again. When water is stirred by the wind, one is unable to see the reflection of one's face. Likewise, when the mind is overcome by restlessness, one is unable to see one's own benefit. Here, the Satipatthana Sutta commentary again refers to the ahara, sutta saying that the hindrance of restlessness arises due to unwise attention. There is, monks, unsettledness of mind, upasamo. Paying unwise attention to this and cultivating it is the newfament for the arising of unarisen restlessness and for the growth and increase of the restlessness that has already arisen. The commentary then says that restlessness is abandoned by wise attention, again referring to the same discourse, where the Buddha said, there is, monks, peacefulness of mind, vupasamo. Paying wise attention to that and cultivating it is the newfament for the non-arising of the unarisen restlessness and for the abandoning of the arisen restlessness. 6 things lead to the abandoning of restlessness and remorse. 1. Great, learning. 2. Questioning. 3. Knowing the monastic discipline. 4. Association with the venerable elders. 5. Good 5164 ayanship. And 6. Suitable conversation. Monks should understand the monastic discipline, and lay people should understand a lay person's discipline. Meditators undertake and observe the 8 precepts, so they should know the right time to eat and what kinds of things may be taken in the A5364 or noons or evenings to allay hunger pangs. Not watching entertainments, not eating a 5364 ear midday, and observing noble silence will also be very helpful in calming the mind and dispelling restlessness. Santam va ajatam vichikicham, ati me ajatam vichikichatibanati. Asantam va ajatam vichikicham, nati me ajatam vichikichati pajanati. Yathaka anupanaya vichikichaya upado hodi tencha pajanati. Yatha cha. Upanaya vichikichaya pahanam hodi tencha pajanati. Yatha kapahinaya. Vichikichaya ayatim anupado hodi tencha pajanati. Here, monks, when doubt is present, a monk knows doubt is present. When doubt is absent, he knows doubt is absent. He also knows how the unarisen doubt comes to arise, how the arisen doubt comes to be abandoned, and how the abandoned doubt does not arise again. When water is muddy, one is unable to see the reflection of one's face. Likewise, when the mind is overcome by doubt, one is unable to see one's own benefit. Here, the commentary again refers to the Ahara Sutta saying that the hindrance of doubt arises due to unwise attention. There are, monks, things that lead to doubt, visikichatani dhamma. Paying unwise attention to these and cultivating them is the newfament for the arising of unarisen doubt and for the growth and increase of the doubt that has already arisen. It then says that doubt is abandoned by wise attention, again referring to the same. Discourse, where the Buddha said, there are monks' wholesome and unwholesome states, blameworthy and blameless states, things that should be followed and things that should not, inferior and inferior states, dark and bright states. Paying wise attention and cultivating it is the newfament for the non-arising of the unarisen doubt and for the abandoning of the arisen doubt. Many don't have sufficient knowledge about unwholesome, blameworthy, inferior, and dark states that should not be followed, so they pay attention unwisely, and their doubts only increase. The more that wise 54 ayans tell them to ignore their doubts and to continue to practice mindfulness. Meditation, the more stubborn they become. Like a patient who has been made sick by medicine, meditators who read too much and debate too much about the right method become difficult to instruct and remain incurable as long as they don't abandon their wrong ways of thinking. The instructions are simple. Be mindful of each and every mental and physical phenomenon that arises throughout the entire day without missing anything. That also includes the hindrance of doubt. If it arises, note it until it disappears, then resume contemplating the movements of the abdomen while sitting and the limbs while walking. There are many different styles of Satipatthana meditation. Mahasi, Mogok, Pa'auk, Ubakin, etc. Within each tradition, individual teachers may sfefes various aspects of the practice. By all means, fefai different meditation techniques, but don't mix them. Follow the teacher's instructions at the senfei, where you are practicing, and if you find that they don't work well for you, try a different method. Even the Venerable Sariputta had no success instructing one monk in the contemplation on the body parts, so he took him to the Buddha, who gave him a unique method suited to his temperament. Contemporary. Teachers lack the Buddha's unique abilities, but meditators need a method that suits them. That's why one should not stay with only the first method. That one fafis due to a misguided sense of loyalty, nor should teachers put any pressure on their students not to learn 5164 other teachers. Iti ajatam va damesu damanupasi viharati bahidava damesu damanupasi viharati ajhata bahidava damesu damanupasi viharati samudaya damanupasi va damesu viharati vaya damanupasi va damesu viharati samudaya vaya dama nupasi va damesu viharati ati damati va panasasati pachupatita hoti yavadev jnanamataya patisatimataya anisitocha viharati nachakinchi loke upadhyati evampi ko bhikkhave bhikkhu Damesu damanupasi viharati painchasu nivarnesu. Thus he dwells contemplating mental objects internally and externally. While contemplating mental objects, he is aware that they arise and pass away. His awareness is established that mental objects exist, but that they are not a being, nor a person, neither a woman nor a man, not a self, nor anything pertaining to a self. He does not regard mental objects as I or mine. Thus he clings to nothing in the world. Thus, monks. A monk dwells, contemplating mental objects in the mental objects of the five hindrances. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Nivaranapabam nitidam. The hindrances section is complete. Dhammanupassana khandapabam. Contemplation of mental objects, aggregate section, 383. Puna kaparam, bhikkhave, bhikkhu damesu dhammanupasi viharati, panchasu upadana kandesu. Kathanchapana bhikkhave bhikkhu, damesu dhammanupasi viharati, panchasu upana kandesu. Ida, bhikkhave bhikkhu, iti rupam, iti rupasa samudayo, iti rupasa. Atthangamo, iti vedanaya samudayo, iti vedanaya atthangamo, iti sanyaya samudayo, iti sanyaya atthangamo, iti sankhara iti. Sankharanam samudayo, iti sankharanam atthangamo, iti vinyanam iti. Vinyanasa samudayo, iti vinyanasa atthangamoti. Again, monks, a monk dwells contemplating mental objects in the mental objects of the five aggregates of attachment. How, monks, does a monk dwell contemplating mental objects in the mental objects of the five aggregates of attachment? Here, monks, a monk knows this is matter. This is the arising of matter. This is the disappearance of matter. This is feeling. This is perception. This is mental formations. This is consciousness. This is the arising of consciousness. This is the disappearance of consciousness. While noting material phenomena, one knows this is matter, which knows nothing. It arises and passes away thus. When noting feelings, one knows this is feeling. It arises and passes away thus. When one notes colors, shapes, and so forth, one knows this is perception. It arises and passes away thus. When one notes sphiving, doing, and so forth, one knows these are mental formations. They arise and pass away thus. When one notes thinking, one knows this is consciousness. It arises and passes away thus. Iti ajata, evampi ko bhikkhave bhikkhu damesu, dhammanupasi viharati panchasu upadana kandesu. Thus he dwells contemplating mental objects internally and externally. While contemplating mental objects, he is aware that they arise and pass away. His awareness is established that mental objects exist, but that they are not a being, nor a person, neither a woman nor a man, not a self nor anything pertaining to a self. He does not regard mental objects as I or mine. Thus he clings to nothing in the world. Thus, monks, a monk dwells, contemplating mental objects in the five aggregates of attachment. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Ke handapaba nithitam. The aggregate section is complete. Dhammanupassana ayatanapabam. Contemplation of mental objects, sense faculties section, 384. Puna kaparam, bhikkhave, bhikkhu damesu dhammanupasi viharati, chasu ajatika bahiresu ayatanesu. Kathanchapana, bhikkhave, bhikkhu, damesu dhammanupasi viharati, chasu ajatika bahiresu ayatanesu. Again, monks, a monk dwells contemplating mental objects in the six, internal and external sense faculties. How, monks, does a monk dwell, contemplating mental objects in the six internal and external sense faculties? Idha, bhikkhave, bhikkhu kakchapajanati, rupika pajanati, yancha, tadubaya paticha upajati samyojanam tancha pajanati, yathaka. Anupanasa samyojanasa upado hodi tancha pajanati, yathacha. Upanasa samyojanasa pahanam hoti tancha pajanati, yathaka pahinasa. Samyojanasa ayatanupado hoti tanka pajanati. Here, monks, a monk knows the eye and sights, and he knows the fetter, that arises dependent on both. He also knows how the unarisen fetter comes to arise, how the arisen fetter comes to be abandoned, and how the abandoned fetter does not arise again. Sotancha pajanati, sadeka pajanati, yancha tadubayam patika upajajati. Samyojanam tancha pajanati, yathaka anupanasa samyojanasa upado. Hoti tancha pajanati, yatha upanasa samyojanasa pahanam hoti tancha. Pajanati, yatha pahinasa samyojanasa ayatim anupado hoti tancha pajanati. Here, monks, a monk knows the ear and sounds arise again. Ganancha pajanati, gandika pajanati, yancha tadubayam patika. Upajati samyojanam tancha pajanati, yathaka anupanasa samyojanasa. Upado hoti tancha pajanati, yathaka upanasa samyojanasa pahanam. Hoti tancha pajanati, yathacha pahinasa samyojanasa ayatim anupado. Hoti tancha pajanati. Here, monks, a monk knows the nose and odors arise again. Jivhancha pajanati, rasika pajanati, yancha tadubayam patika upajati. Samyojanam tancha pajanati, yathaka anupanasa samyojanasa upado hoti. Tancha pajanati, yathaka upanasa samyojanasa pahanam hoti tancha pajanati. Yathaka pahinasa samyojanasa ayatim anupado hoti tancha pajanati. Here, monks, a monk knows the tongue and tastes arise again. Kayancha pajanati, fotabeka pajanati, yanka tadubaya patika. Upajati samyojanam tancha pajanati, yathaka anupanasa samyojanasa. Upado hoti tancha pajanati, yathaka upanasa samyojanasa pahanam. Hoti tancha pajanati, yathaka pahinasa samyojanasa ayatim anupado. Hoti tancha pajanati. Here, monks, a monk knows the body and touches arise again. Mananka pajanati, dhammika pajanati, yancha tadubayam patika. Upajati samyojanam tancha pajanati, yathaka anupanasa samyojanasa. Upado hoti tancha pajanati, yathaka upanasa samyojanasa pahanam. Hoti tancha pajanati, yathaka pahinasa samyojanasa ayatim anupado. Hoti tancha pajanati. Here, monks, a monk knows the mind and ideas arise again. This section is summarized in the Buddha's instructions to Bahia and to Malukya put, when you see, just know that you see it. When you hear, just know that you hear it. When you sense, muta equals smell, taste, or touch, just know that you sense it. When you know, just know that you know it. This instruction is extremely helpful for a meditator. The six senses are like six open windows through which a burglar, mental defilements, can enter at any time. If the six senses are guarded carefully, no mental defilements can infeud. Bahia realized arahantship faster than any other disciple by listening to this very brief instruction while the Buddha was on his alms round. He had exceptional perfections of courageous effort and resolute determination, so he understood at once. Ordinary meditators will need to feign themselves with this exercise throughout the whole day, especially when they are not practicing formal sitting or walking meditation. Meal. Times are especially dangerous for meditators as there are many sensory inputs. A diligent meditator should take great care to maintain uninterrupted mindfulness of the six sense bases and the six sense objects while eating. Iriya jatamba evampiko bhikkave bhikkhu dhammesu dhammanupasi viharati chasu ajhatikaba hiresu ayatanesu. Thus he dwells contemplating mental objects internally and externally. While contemplating mental objects, he is aware that they arise and pass away. His awareness is established that mental objects exist, but that they are not a being nor a person, neither a woman nor a man, not a self nor anything pertaining to a self. He does not regard mental objects as I or mine, thus he clings to nothing in the world. Thus, monks, a monk dwells, contemplating mental objects in the six internal and external sense faculties. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Ayatanapabab nithitam. The sense faculties section is complete. Dhammanupasana bojangapabha. Contemplation of mental objects, enlightenment factors section, 385. Punakapara, Bhikkhave, Bhikkhu Dhamesu, Dhammanupasi Viharati, Satasu Bojangesu, Kathanchapana, Bhikkhave, Bhikkhu Dhamesu, Dhammanupasi Viharati Satasu Bojangesu, Idha, Bhikkhave, Bhikkhu, Santa Va'ajatam Satisambojangam, Atime Ajatam, Satisambojangoti Pajanati, Asantam Va'ajatam Satisambojangam, Natime Ajatam Satisambojangoti Pajanati, Yatha Anupanasa, Satisambojangasa Upado Hoti Taincha Pajanati, Yathacha Upanasa, Satisambojangasa Bhavanaya Paripuri Hoti Taincha Pajanati. Again, monks, a monk dwells contemplating mental objects in the 7 enlightenment factors. How, monks, does a monk dwell contemplating mental objects in the 7 enlightenment factors? Here, monks, when the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is present in him, a monk knows the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is present. When the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is absent, he knows the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is absent. He also knows how the unarisen enlightenment factor of mindfulness comes to arise, and how the arisen enlightenment factor of mindfulness is developed and reaches maturity. The word Buddha is the past participle of bujati to understand. Boja is 5164 ohm the same verb. Anga here means a factor. The purpose of Satipatthana meditation is to establish mindfulness when the restless and scattered mind settles down in the present moment and learns to focus on realities occurring in the body and mind. 5164 ohm moment to moment, the enlightenment factor of mindfulness develops. When it becomes esvafong, the mind is extremely clear and bright like a powerful searchlight. Nothing escapes its attention. However, mere awareness of the body and mind is not enough. The objects must also be examined carefully. Santa va ajatam dhammavikaya sambojang, atime ajatam. Dhammavikaya sambojangoti pajanati, asantam va ajatam dhammavikaya. Sambojangam, natime ajatam dhammavikaya sambogoti pajanati. Yathaka anupanasa dhammavikaya sambojangasa upado hoti taincha. Pajanati, yathaka upanasa dhammavikaya sambojangasa bhavanaya. Paripuri hoti tainka pajanati. When the enlightenment factor of investigation is present in him, he knows the enlightenment factor of investigation is present. When the enlightenment factor of investigation is absent, he knows the enlightenment factor of investigation is absent. He also knows how the unarisen enlightenment factor of investigation comes to arise, and how the arisen enlightenment factor of investigation is developed and reaches maturity. In the Milindapanya, the king asks Nagasena, "How many factors of enlightenment are there?" "7, O king," he replies. The king then asks, "By how many factors does one awaken to the Futh?" Nagasena replies, "By 1, investigation of Efuth, for nothing can be understood without that." The king asks, "Then why is it said that there are 7? Nagasena asks a counter-question. "Could the sword that is in your scabbard cut anything, if it was not taken up in the hand?" The king replies, "No, venerable sir." Nagasena says, "Just so, O king, without the other factors of enlightenment, investigation of Efuth could not awaken to the Efuth. The factor of investigation is crucial. In practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness, one has to keep investigating the objects of awareness. If pain arises somewhere in the body, bring investigation to bear on it. What kind of pain is this? Where is it exactly? Is it permanent or does it change? Similarly, with all other objects for contemplation, if you feel restless or doubtful, lazy or drowsy, investigate it. For example, how do I know that? I feel sleepy. Are the eyelids heavy? Am I just getting lazy? Why am I reluctant to note the meditation objects? Santava ajatam virya sambojangam. Ati me ajatam virya sambogoti pajanati. Asantam va ajatam virya sambojangam. Nati me ajatam virya sambojangoti pajanati. Yathaka anupanasa. Virya sambojangasa upado hoti tancha pajanati, yathacha upanasa. Virya sambojangasa bhavanaya paripuri hoti tanka pajanati. When the enlightenment factor of energy is present in him, he knows. The enlightenment factor of energy is present. When the enlightenment factor of energy is absent, he knows. The enlightenment factor of energy is absent. He also knows how the unarisen enlightenment factor of energy comes to arise, and how the arisen enlightenment factor of energy is developed and reaches maturity. If the enlightenment factor of investigation is brought to bear on each meditation object as it occurs, energy and enthusiasm for the practice will develop. An energetic and courageous meditator has no fear of pain, hardship, or difficulties. They are only seen as tests of his or her courage and determination. If the going gets tough, the tough get going, as the saying says. SF living with great determination generates more energy, and all obstructions are quickly swept away. A lazy meditator, however, keeps falling away 5164 the practice and need 5164 equant encouragement. 5164 the teacher. Santam va ajatam piti sambojangam, ati mi ajatam. Piti sambojangam ti pajanati, asantam va ajat piti sambojangam. Nati mi ajatam piti sambojangam ti pajanati, yathaka anupanasa. Piti sambojangasa upado hoti taincha pajanati, yatha ka upanasa. Piti sambojasa bhavanaya parapuri hoti tainka pajanati. When the enlightenment factor of joy is present in him, he knows the enlightenment factor of joy is present. When the enlightenment factor of joy is absent, he knows the enlightenment factor of joy is absent. He also knows how the unarisen enlightenment factor joy comes to arise and how the arisen enlightenment factor of joy is developed and reaches maturity. With continuous effort to be mindful and investigate each meditation object, the mind becomes bright and buoyant. In the early morning, the meditator gets up willingly, enthusiastic to begin another day of practice, and optimistic of attaining 5164 insights. He or she may become rather talkative and in need of rest faint by the teacher or fellow meditators. Santa va ajatam, pasadi sambojanga, ati me ajatam, pasadi sambojango ti pajanati, asanta va ajatam pasadi sambojanga, nati me ajatam pasadi sambojango ti, pajanati, yathacha anupanasa pasadi sambojanga sa upadohoti, tancha pajanati, yetha taka upanasa pasadi sambojangasa bhavanaya, paripuri hoti taincha pajanati. When the enlightenment factor of tranquility is present in him, he knows the enlightenment factor of tranquility is present. When the enlightenment factor of tranquility is absent, he knows the enlightenment factor of tranquility is absent. He also knows how the unarisen enlightenment factor of tranquility comes to arise and how the arisen enlightenment factor of tranquility is developed and reaches maturity. As concentration develops further, the mind becomes less effervescent and more peaceful. Tranquility and happiness become more predominant than joy and exhilaration. Santava ajatam samadhi sambojanga, ati me ajatam, samadhi sambojango ti pajanati, asantava ajatam, samadhi sambojangam, nati me ajatam samadhi sambojango ti, pajanati, yathaka anupanasa samadhi sambojangasa upadohoti, tancha pajanati, yathaka upanasa samadhi sambojangasa bhavanaya, parapuri hoti tanka pajanati. When the enlightenment factor of concentration is present in him, he knows the enlightenment factor of concentration is present. When the enlightenment factor of concentration is absent, he knows the enlightenment factor of concentration is absent. He also knows how the unarisen enlightenment factor of concentration comes to arise, and how the arisen enlightenment factor of concentration is developed and reaches maturity. When the mind is joyful and happy, concentration comes easily. The meditator can sit or walk for long periods. 4 hours or longer is not exceptional, without interruption. Santa va ajatam upekasambojang, ati me ajatam upeksambojango ti pajanati, asanta va ajatam upekasambojanga. Nati me ajatam upekasambojango ti pajanati, yathaka, anupanasa upekasambojangasa upado hoti tancha pajanati, yatha. Ka upanasa upekasambojangasa, bhavanaya paripuri hoti tancha, pajanati. When the enlightenment factor of equanimity is present in him, he knows the enlightenment factor of equanimity is present. When the enlightenment factor of equanimity is absent, he knows the enlightenment factor of equanimity is absent. He also knows how the unarisen enlightenment factor of equanimity comes to arise, and how the arisen enlightenment factor of equanimity is developed and reaches maturity. As concentration matures further, even happiness disappears and equanimity becomes the predominant factor. On the attainment of knowledge of equanimity about formations, the meditator is indifferent to pain or pleasure and is able to sit for hours without changing the posture, or is able to practice walking for the whole 5364 noon or all night. Iti ajatamva, damisu damanupasi viharati satasu bojangisu. Thus, he dwells contemplating mental objects internally and externally. While contemplating mental objects, he is aware that they arise and pass away. His awareness is established that mental objects exist, but that they are not a being, nor a person, neither a woman nor a man, not a self, nor anything pertaining to a self. He does not regard mental objects as I or mine, thus he clings to nothing in the world. Thus, a monk dwells, contemplating mental objects in the 7 enlightenment factors. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Bojjhangapabam Nithitam. The enlightenment factors section is complete. Dhammanupassana Sakapabha, contemplation of mental objects, the truth section. 386. Puna Kapara, Bhikkhave, Bhikkhu Dhammesu Dhammanupasi Viharati, Katusu Aryasachasu, Kathanchapana, Bhikkhu Dhammesu Dhamma, Nupasi Viharati, Katusu Aryasachasu? Ida, Bhikkhave, Bhikkhu Idam, Dukkhanti Yathabhutam Pajanati, Ayam Dukkha Samudayoti Yathabhutam, Pajanati, Ayam Dukkha Nirodoti Yathabhutam Pajanati, Ayam Dukkha Nirodagamani Patipadati Yathabhutam Pajanati. Again, monks, a monk dwells contemplating mental objects in the mental objects of the Four Noble Truths. How, monks, does a monk dwell contemplating mental objects in the mental objects of the Four Noble Truths? Here, monks, a monk knows as it really is. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the path leading to the cessation of suffering. I assume that knows as it really is, Yathabhuta Pajanati, refers to path, knowledge, since prior to that, the Four Noble Truths are not fully understood. However, even at early stages in the development of insight, the 3 characteristics are understood to some extent. This knowledge will become extremely vivid at the higher stages of insight, such as knowledge of fearfulness, bhaya-jnana, knowledge of misery, adinava-jnana, and null edge of disgust, nibbāna. These 3 knowledges will lead to knowledge of desire for deliverance, munsi tukamya-jnana. Although the meditator may become reluctant to practice meditation at these higher stages of insight, when encouraged by their teacher, they will again contemplate mental and physical phenomena with the knowledge of reobservation, patisankhanupassanyana, leading to knowledge of equanimity about formations, sankaropekanyana, and the highest stages of the path. Insight into the other 3 noble truths will progress as insight into the truth of suffering matures. Without the benefit of continuous and prolonged insight meditation practice, the 4 noble truths remain obscured behind the veil of ignorance, avijja. Although mental and physical phenomena are impermanent, anicca, they are regarded as permanent. Although they are in fact unsatisfactory and suffering, dukkha, they are regarded as pleasant and enjoyable. Although they are not self, anatta, devoid of essence, and do not belong to or obey anyone, they are seen as self, having their own identity, as belonging to oneself and as obeying one's wish. This kind of ignorance is unlike not knowing the name of some person or place, or not understanding a foreign language, nor even the correct meaning of one's own language. It is acceptance of a falsehood while ignoring the truth. Pathama Banavaro Nitito. The first section for recitation is complete. Dukkhasakkanadeso, the exposition of the truth of suffering. 387. Katamancha, Bhikkave, Dukkham Aryasakam, Jatipi Dukkha, Jarapi Dukkha, Maranampi Dukkham, Sokaparideva Dukkhadomanasapi Dukkha, Apiehi Sampayogopi Dukkho, Piehi Vipayogopi Dukkho, Yampichamna, Labaditampi Dukkham, Sankatena Panchupadana Kandha Dukkha. What, monks, is the noble truth of suffering? Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering, grief, lamentation, pain, sorrow, and despair are suffering. Association with the unloved is suffering. Separation 5164 The loved is suffering. Not getting what one wishes is suffering. In brief, the 5 aggregates of attachment are suffering. This is where the Satipatthana Sutta of the Digha Nikaya and the Satipatthana Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya diverge in some editions. The Digha Nikaya version expands on each aspect of suffering as below. 388. Karamaka, Bhikkave Jati, Yatesam Tesam Satanam Tamhi Tami, Satanakaya Jati Sanjati Okanti Abhinibati Kandhanam Patubhavo, Ayatananam Patilabo, Ayam Vukati, Bhikkave Jati. What, monks, is birth? The coming into existence, the origination, the conception, arising in a new form, the appearance of the aggregates, the acquisition of sense faculties in various beings. This, monks, is called birth. It should be obvious that birth into the human realm is suffering, but the birth of a new baby is usually celebrated as a joyful occasion. According to the Buddha's teaching, birth begins at the moment of conception, A5364 year. Spending up to 9 or 10 months developing in the womb, the baby then has to be pushed through a tight space at the time of parturition. As soon as a baby is born, it cries for oxygen, then for milk, and longs for SO5364 and gentle contacts. When the baby gets what it wants, the crying stops for a while, but the suffering never ceases. Birth is the basis of suffering, as it leads to all the many other types of suffering, such as pain, disease, aging, and death. When doctors sign a death certificate, they could always put the cause of death as birth, because without that, none of the other fatal diseases could occur. Birth into heavenly realms is spontaneous and not at all thematic-like. Birth into the human, animal, or other lower realms. Nevertheless, it is the basis for all other suffering. Kadamacha bhikkhave jara, ya tesan satanan tami tami, satanakaye jara jiranara kanjikam valatakara ayuno sanhani, indriyanam parapako, ayam vukari, bhikkhave jara. What, monks, is aging? The process of aging and decrepitude, having broken teeth, gray hair, wrinkled skin, the fading of the life force, the decline of the sensibilities in various beings. This, monks, is called aging. While we are young, we have plenty of energy and can eat whatever we wish. Old people get tired quickly with physical exertion, and O5364EN have to take care over what they eat. The outward signs of aging like gray hair and wrinkled skin are disliked, so people buy cosmetics to FY to conceal the fact that they're getting old. The sense faculties fade with age, so old. People need hearing aids, spectacles, and walking sticks. The degeneration of the mental faculties, such as short-term memory loss, slower recall of names and facts, and in many cases now, severe dementia that leaves some elderly people in need of round-the-clock care to make sure that they do not wander off or forget to eat, and so forth. 390. Katamancha, Bhikkhav, Maranam, Yam Tesam Tesam Satanam Tamha Tamha. Satanakaya Kudi Kavana Bedo Enteradanam Maku Maranam Kalakirya. Kandanam Bedo Kevarasa Nikapo Jivindriyasu Pachedo Idam. Vukati Pike Maranam. What, monks, is death? The decease, passing away, dissolution, disappearance, ending of life, passing away due to completion of the lifespan, the breaking up of the aggregates, the discarding of the body, the desfunction of the life faculty of various beings. This, monks, is called death. The suffering of death always comes in due course, even if one lives to be over 100. However, the threat of death is always present even before the completion of the lifespan due to disease, injury, fire, flood, famine, crime, war, and other dangers. People have to make constant efforts to maintain life and prevent death, even in the most benign of climates and circumstances. They must drink and eat regularly, protect themselves 5164 ex-feme weather, and build and maintain their houses to protect themselves. 5164 the elements, as very few can dwell in the open air under FVs or in caves like the monks did during the first few years of the Buddha's dispensation. People pay for life insurance, yet it offers no protection 5164 death at all. All it can do is ensure that their dependents are not L5364 without financial support in the event of their unexpected demise. The Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta 1 in describing suffering includes, disease is also suffering bhayadipi dukkho, so its omission here is puzzling. Perhaps the Buddha did not mention it because all in the audience enjoyed vigorous good health. As far as I can tell, the Satipatthana commentary does not mention its absence, and the Visuddhimagga does not explain it. But see the footnote for a comment found in the Visuddhimagga Mahatthika, too. In his discourse on the Wheel of Dhamma, the Venerable Mahasi, Sayadaw blames the disparity on an error in the Dhammacakka Sutta, saying that bhayadipi dukkho should not be there, as disease is included in the word dukkha of sokaparidava dukkha domanasupayasa, which is missing there. However, disease is obviously suffering, and the oppression caused by disease is a very good object of contemplation for one who is esfeving to gain insight. Ailments such as colds and flu, hay fever, or migraine are at the very least an irritation, and at worst are so debilitating that one can barely maintain mindfulness at all. They come uninvited and cease only when their causes cease, or a 5364 or medical fetiment, or a change of climate. When sick, a meditator should not stop practicing, but may adopt the lying posture if too weak to sit or walk. 391. Katamoka bhikkhave soko, yoko bhikkhave anyataranya bayasanena, samanagatasa anyataranya dukkadamena futasa soko, sokana sochitatam antosoko antoparasoko, ayam vukati, bhikkhav soko. What, monks, is grief? The grieving, sorrowing, and anxiety, the inward, grief and wretchedness of one beset by any kind of ruinous loss, who is stricken by some painful misfortune. This, monks, is called grief. If a close family member dies, if one's business fails, if one's home is despoiled, or if a loving relationship falls apart, ordinary people experience great mental distress and even physical suffering. A few are driven to suicide. A5364 are pharmatic personal losses. 392. Katamoka bhikkhave paridevo, yoko bhikkhave anyataranya bayasanena samanagatasa anyataranya dukkadamena futasa adivo paridevo adivana paridivana adivitatam paridivitatam. Ayam vukati, bhikkhave paridevo. What, monks, is lamentation? The weeping and lamenting, the act of weeping and lamenting, the crying and wailing of one beset by any kind of ruinous loss, who is stricken by some painful misfortune. This, monks, is called lamentation. It is not unusual even for grown men to weep A5364, the loss of a close relative, but it does nothing to relieve their suffering, but only magnifies it. As it says in the Sala Sutta, one who laments gains nothing. A fool only harms himself. A wise man would lament if it was beneficial. From weeping and grieving, no, mental peace can come. It will only lead to greater pain and bodily harm. He becomes pale and thin and only harms himself. He cannot raise the dead, so his lamentation is 5164 useless. One who cannot abandon grief is dragged further into sorrow. Bewailing the dead, one becomes a slave to grief. Sen, VV 588, Thai 591. A meditator should contemplate the suffering of lamentation and realize the three characteristics. At times, a meditator may grieve and lament over the loss of morality or failure to attain concentration and insight. However, weeping is useless. One should abandon it and do what is necessary to reestablish morality and mindfulness. 393. Katamancha bhikkhave dukkam yamko bhikkhave kayikam asatam kayasam fasajam dukkha asatam vedaita idam vukati bhikkhave dukkam. What, monks, is pain? The bodily pain and discomfort, the painful and unpleasant feeling produced by bodily contact. This, monks, is called pain. Physical pain and discomfort such as heat or cold are very oppressive. A meditator should face them bravely, stirring up effort to overcome aversion to unpleasant feelings. Instead of changing one's sitting posture to get rid of pain, a meditator should change his or her attitude and regard pain as a 5164 in the guise of a foe. Painful sensations are very good meditation objects. They demand your attention, so the wandering mind disappears at once. If the enlightenment factor of investigation is brought to bear onto painful physical sensations or discomfort, one may gain useful insights. If a mosquito is biting you, do not break your precepts by killing it. If you brush it away, it will keep returning and bite you in other places. Become a blood donor and let it drink as much as it wants the first time. Then it will go away having been satisfied. Contemplate the itching sensations and gain insight knowledge. 394. Katamanka bhikkhave domanasam yamko bhikkhave setasikam dukkam setasikam manosam fasata manosam vedeita idam vukati bhikkhave domanasam. What, monks, is sorrow? The mental pain and distress, the painful and unpleasant feeling produced by mental contact. This, monks, is called sorrow. Sorrow, domanasam, is the opposite of happiness, so in my opinion, this is a more appropriate translation than grief, which is best, used for the translation of the term soko, which is more intense than sorrow. The Visuddhimagga reverses the two, using sorrow for soko and grief for domanassa. The Burma Pitaka Association translation uses grief for soko and disfess for domanassa. If feeling sad on recalling past event or anticipating some future loss or separation, contemplate the mental feeling and the factors that lead to its arising and disappearance. Having dispelled it with wise attention, one should be optimistic of success. 395. Katamoka bhikkhave upayaso, yoko bhikkhave anyataranya bayasanena samanagatasa anyataranya dukkadamena, futsa ayaso upayaso ayastata upayasitatan, ayam vukiti, Bhikkhu Upayaso. What, monks, is despair? The fooble and despair, the fibulation of. One beset by any kind of ruinous loss, who is fickened by some painful misfortune. This, monks, is called despair. Despair is the suffering of hopelessness. When overwhelmed by loss or failure, one may feel that the task is impossible. If a meditator fails to gain any extraordinary insights A5364 many months or years of practice, he or she may give up and leave the refit senfi. But all is not lost. Insights can arise later due to the impetus gained while on refit. Despair is just another mental state that one is likely to encounter on the path of insight. If it is contemplated with wise attention, it will be realized as impermanent, suffering, and not self. 396. Katamoka bhikkhave apiehi sampayogo dukkho, ida yasa tehonti, anita akanta amanapa rupa sada ganda rasa fotaba dhamma. Ye, va panasa tehanti anatakama ahitakama afasukakama ayoga kemakama yatehi sadi shangati samagamo samodhanam. Misibo ayam vukavi apiehi sampayogo dukkho. What, monks, is the suffering of association with the unloved? Having to meet, be and remain in contact or mingle with sights, sounds, odors, tastes, touches, and mind objects that are undesirable, unpleasant, or unenjoyable, or with beings who desire one's harm, loss, discomfort, or bondage. This, monks, is called the suffering of association with the unloved. In the beginning of this discourse, it is said, having gone to a forest, or to the root of a fifi, or to an empty place. Why is this said? It is recommended to meditate in such places because one is less likely to be disturbed by sense objects that might obstruct the development of concentration. Nevertheless, even in the most ideal forest refit senfi, one will inevitably encounter some unpleasant sense objects. Forests are populated by snakes, biting insects, rodents, noisy birds, and wild animals that might be a source of irritation and danger. In towns and cities, there may be pleasing sounds such as music, attractive members of the opposite sex, or odors of food cooking, etc., which, though pleasing to ordinary people, are disliked by wise meditators. As far as practical, one should avoid sense objects that are likely to disturb one's meditation, but if they arise, then they should be contemplated too. Understand the futh of suffering. 397. Katamoka piehi vipayo dukkho, ida yasa te honti ita. Kanta manarupa pradrasa fotaba dhamma yeva panasa. Te honti atakama hitakama fasukakama yoga kemakama mata va pita. Va bata va bagini va mita va amaka va nyati salohidva ya tehi sadim. Asangati asamagamo asamodana amisbavo ayam vukkari bhikkave piehi vipayogo dukkho. What, monks, is the suffering of separation 5164 the loved? Being unable to meet, be or remain in contact, or mix with sights, sounds, odors, tastes, touches, and mind objects that are desirable, pleasant, or enjoyable, or with one's mother, father, brothers, sisters, 5164 INs, colleagues, or blood, relatives who desire one's advantage, benefit, comfort, and 5164 idam, 5164 om. Bondage, this, monks, is called the suffering of separation, 5164 om, the loved. Meditators who have not been away 5164 loved ones before may suffer loneliness, or they may miss the comforts that they are used to at home. If such thoughts arise, they should be contemplated to understand suffering and the cause of its arising, which is craving. 398. Katamancha bhikkave yampicham nalabati tampi dukkam jati dhamanam bhikkave satanam evam icha upajati aho vatamaya najati dhamma asama nakavatano jati agachayati. Nako panita, ichaya patabam, idampi yampicham nalabadi tampi dukkam, jaradhamanam, bhikkave satana evam icha upajati, ahovata, maya najaradama asama, nachavata no jara agachayati, nako, panedam ichaya patabam, idampi yampicham nalabati tampi dukkam, biadidamanam, bhikkave satanam evam icha upajati, ahovata, maya na biadidama asama, nakavata no biadi agachayati. Nako panedam ichaya patabam, idampi yampichan nalabadi tampi, dukkam. Maranadamanam, bhikkave, satanam evam icha upajati. Aho vata mayam na maranadam asama, nachavada no maranam, agachayati. Nako panedam ichaya patabam, idampi yampichamna. Labati tampi dukkam. Soka paradeva gadomana supaya sadhamanam. Bhikkave, satana eva icha upajati. Aho vatamaya na soka paradeva, dukkado manasupai sadhama asama, nacha vata no soka paradeva, dukkado manasupai sadhama agachayunti. Na ko panetam ichaya, patabam idampi yampichana labadi tampi dukkam. What, monks, is the suffering of not getting what one wishes? In being subject to birth, monks, the wish may arise, oh, that we were not subject to birth, oh, that new birth would not happen to us. However, it is not possible to get such a wish. This is the suffering of not getting what one wishes. In being subject to aging, monks, the wish may arise, oh, that we were not subject to aging, oh, that we would not get old. However, it is not possible to get such a wish. This too is the suffering of not getting what one wishes. In being subject to disease, monks, the wish may arise, oh, that we were not subject to disease, oh, that we would not get sick. However, it is not possible to get such a wish. This too is the suffering of not getting what one wishes. In being subject to death, monks, the wish may arise, oh, that we were not subject to death, oh, that we would not die. However, it is not possible to get such a wish. This too is the suffering of not getting what one wishes. In being subject to grief, lamentation, pain, sorrow, and despair, the wish may arise, oh, that we were not subject to grief, lamentation, pain, sorrow, and despair. Oh, that we would not experience grief, lamentation, pain, sorrow, and despair. However, it is not possible to get such a wish. This too is the suffering of not getting what one wishes. One who expects and hopes to enjoy pleasure and happiness will suffer a great deal due to not getting what he or she wants. One who is a well-inflected disciple of the noble ones cannot avoid the suffering of birth, aging, and so forth. However, he or she does not suffer needlessly due to not getting what he or she wants. But one, when things do not turn out as one wishes, a meditator contemplates this fact as the fruit of suffering. 399. Kadame pikave sankitana painkuparanakanda dukkha, Sayatidam rupuparanakando, Vedanuparanakando, Sanyu, Paranakando, Sankaruparanakando, Vinyanuparanakando. Ime, Vukanti, Bhikkhave, Sankitana Paintuparanakanda dukkha, Idam, Vukati, Bhikkhave, Dukkam Aryasakam. What, monks, in brief, is the suffering of the five aggregates of attachment? They are the aggregate of attachment to form, the aggregate of attachment of feelings, the aggregate of attachment to perceptions, the aggregate of attachment to mental formations, and the aggregate of attachment to consciousness. This, monks, in brief, is called the suffering of the five aggregates of attachment. This, monks, is called the noble Futh of suffering. Even the arahants are not 5164 EE, 5164 OM, the five aggregates. They have physical form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. However, they are 5164E, 5164 Om attachment to them, so they no longer suffer. If a meditator is aware of attachment to any of the five aggregates, they should contemplate that as the Futh of suffering. For example, people have different views due to different perceptions and dispute because of that, attachment. If a meditator is able to contemplate the attachment to views and perceptions as conditioned phenomena, they can gain insight into the Futh of suffering instead of disputing. Samudaya Sakaniddaso, the exposition of the truth of the cause, 400. Katamancha Bhikkhave Dukkha Samudaya Arya Sakam, Yayam Tanha, Pono Bhavika Nandiragasaga Tafatafabhinandini, Sayatidam, Kamatanha Bhavatanha Vibhavatanha. What, monks, is the noble Futh of the cause of suffering? The craving that gives rise to 5164 Esh rebirth, accompanied by delight and passion, finding great delight here and there, namely, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence. Many Buddhists perform meritorious deeds, hoping to obtain beneficial results, such as wealth, long life, health, or celestial rebirth A5364 ER, death. When the Buddha's stepbrother, Nanda, first ordained, he practiced meditation hard to obtain the celestial nymphs shown to him by the Buddha to take his mind away, 5164 Omam thoughts of his fiancée, who he had, LE 53/64, behind to become a monk under the Buddha. This is, no doubt, craving for existence, and is a cause of suffering. A meditator should contemplate any similar thoughts, such as the wish to find a more peaceful meditation senfei, to gain worldly benefits or heavenly rebirth, as the causes of suffering. One should understand them as suffering that leads away 5164 on the path. Sakopanisa upajamana upajati, katha, nivasamana nivasati, yam loke pirupam satarupam, ette satana, upajamana upajati, etta nivasamana nivasati. When this craving arises, monks, where does it arise? When it establishes itself, where does it establish itself? When it arises and establishes itself, it does so in the delight and pleasure in the world. This is where craving arises and establishes itself. Craving arises on hearing about the delightful attributes of other places. In this context, in the world, lok means in the 5 aggregates that comprise the world of sense experience. This may be in this human world or in other realms of existence. Some people, seeing a pampered cat or dog, may wish to be reborn as such a pet. If they die with such thoughts, they may get their wish. This shows how dangerous craving for existence can be. It is best to contemplate the suffering aspects of existence to abandon craving for existence. The Buddha did not recommend any existence, saying that even a small piece of excrement smells bad. Kincha loke piyarupam satarupam, kaku loke piyarupa satarupam, etta sata upajamana upajati, etta nivasamana nivasati, sotam loke, ganam loke, jiva loke, kayo loke, mano loke piyarupam, satarupam, etta satana upajamana upajati, etta nivasamana nivasati. Where are delight and pleasure in the world? In the world of the eye, our delight and pleasure, their craving arises and establishes itself. In the world of the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind are. Delight and pleasure, their craving arises and establishes itself. Rupalok, Sadalok, Gandalok, Rasalok, Photabalok. Dhammaloke piyarupam satarupam, etta satanha upajamana, upajati, etta nivasamana nivasati. In the world of sights, sounds, odors, tastes, touches, ideas are delight and pleasure. Their craving arises and establishes itself. In brief, craving arises in the 6 sense faculties dependent on contact and feeling. Then craving leads to attachment and repeated thinking and planning about the object of one's desires. For example, on tasting a particularly delicious food, one may wish to eat it again tomorrow and the next day and start pondering about how it was prepared and so forth. A meditator should remain constantly mindful on seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking, contemplating the 6 sense faculties to realize the footh of suffering in the sense bases, sense objects, contact, feeling, perception, and initial and sustained application. It is not possible to prevent contact with the 6 sense objects. However, a meditator should contemplate all of the various thoughts and impulsions that arise, dependent on the 6 sense faculties, to realize that they are nothing but the causes of suffering. If one contemplates in this way, the footh of the cause of suffering can be abandoned. Kaku vinyan lok, sota vinyanam loke, gana vinyanam lok, jiva vinyanam loke, kaya vinyanam lok, mano vinyanam loke piyarupam, satarupam, ethastanta upajamana upajati, etta nivasamana nivasati. In the world of eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind consciousness, our delight and pleasure, their craving arises and establishes itself. Kakusam faso lok, sodasam faso lok, ganasam faso lok, jivasam faso lok, kayasam faso lok, manosam faso lok, piyarupam satarupam, et sata upajamana upajati, etta, nivasamana nivasati. In the world of eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, mind contact, our delight and pleasure there, craving arises and establishes itself. Kaku samfasaj vedana lok, sota samfasaj vedana loke, kana samfasaj vedana loke, jivha samfasaj vedana lok, kaya samfasaj vedana lok, mano samfasaj vedana loke piyarupam, satarupam, etta satanha upajamana upajati, etta nivisamana nivisati. In the world of feeling born of eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, feeling born of mind contact, our delight and pleasure, their craving arises and establishes itself. Rupasanya lok, satasanya lok, gandasanya lok, rasasanya, lok photabasanya lok, dhammasanya lok piyarupam satarupam, ethasatana upajamana upajati, etta nivasamana nivasati. In the world of visual perception, auditory perception, olfactory perception, gustatory perception, tactile perception, mental perception are delight and pleasure. Their craving arises and establishes itself. Rupasansitana lok, satasansitana loki, gandasansitana lok, rasasansitana lok, photabasansitana lok, dhammasansitana, lok piyarupam sadarupam, etisa tanha, upajamana upajati, etha, nivasamana nivasati. In the world of visual volition, auditory volition, olfactory volition, gustatory volition, tactile volition, mental volition are delight and pleasure. Their craving arises and establishes itself. Rupatanta lok, sadatanta lok, gandatanta lok, rasatana lok, fothabatanta lok, dhammatana lok piyarupam satarupam, ethisatana upajamana upajati, etha nivasamana nivasati. In the world of visual craving, auditory craving, olfactory craving, gustatory craving, tactile craving, mental craving are delight and pleasure. Their craving arises and establishes itself. Rupa vitako lok, sadavitako loki, gandha vitako loki, rasa vitako loki, photthaba vitako loki, dhamma vitako loki. Piyarupam sadarupam, ethisatanta upajamana upajati, etha nivasamana nivasati. In the world of visual initial application, auditory initial application, olfactory initial application, gustatory initial application, tactile initial application, mental initial application are delight and pleasure. Their craving arises and establishes itself. Rupa vicharo lok, sada vicharo lok, gandha vicharo lok, rasa vicharo. Lok, taba vicharo lok, dhamma vicharo lok piyarupam satarupam, etha satanta upajamana upajati, etha nivasamana nivasati. Idam vukati bhikkhāv dukkhasamudayam aryasakam. In the world of visual sustained application, auditory sustained application, olfactory sustained application, gustatory sustained application, tactile sustained application, mental sustained application, are delight and pleasure. Their craving arises and establishes itself. This, monks, is called the noble fefuth of the cause of suffering. Nirodha Sakaniddiso, the exposition of the truth of cessation, 401. Katamancha bhikkhave dukkanirodham aryasakam yotasayava tanhaya asesa viraganirodo kago patnasago muti analayo. What, monks, is the noble futh of the cessation of suffering? It is the cessation without remainder of this very craving, its relinquishing and discarding, the liberation and detachment 5164 Amit. Sa ko panesa bhikkhave tanha katapayamana pahayati kata nirujamana nirujati? Yam loke piyarupam satarupam, etesa tanha, pahiyamana pahiyati, etha nirujamana nirujati. When this craving, monks, is abandoned, where is it abandoned? When? It ceases. Where does it cease? When this craving is abandoned and ceases, it is abandoned and ceases to delight and take pleasure in whatever is, delightful and pleasurable in the world. If sense objects were not delightful and pleasurable, no one would be attached to them, and no one would suffer due to pursuing them and getting attached to them. When a meditator abandons craving, he or she is no longer enamored by even the most delightful sensual objects because their cessation is far superior. A certain monk, who was formerly a king, attained arahantship. He went about uttering, "Oh, what bliss!" The other monks imagined that he might have been recollecting the pleasures that he formerly enjoyed in the royal palaces and gardens. The Buddha assured them that he was not, but was rejoicing in the bliss of Nibbāna. Many fear that cessation may be a complete absence of happiness, but those who contemplate the body understand the taste of Nibbāna. Kincha loke piyarupam sadarupam, kakku loke piyarupam sadarupam, etasa tanta pahiyamana pahiyati, etha nirujamana nirujati. Sotam, ganam loke, jiva loke, kayo loke, mano loke piyarupam, sadarupam, ethisata pahiyamana pahiyati, etha nirujamana nirujati. Where are delight and pleasure in the world? In the world of the eye. Our delight and pleasure, their craving ceases and is abandoned. In the world of the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind, their craving is abandoned and ceases. Their craving ceases to delight and take pleasure. Rupa loke, sada loke, gandha loke, rasa loke, photthaba loke, dhamma loke piyarupam satarupam, ethisatana payamana pahiyati, etha nirujamana nirujati. In the world of sights, sounds, odors, tastes, touches, ideas are delight and pleasure. Their craving is abandoned and ceases. Kakku vinyanam lok, soda vinyanam lok, gana vinyanam lok, jivha vinyanam lok, kaya vinyanam lok, mano vinyanam lok, piyarupam satarupam, etha tanha pahiyamana pahiyati, etha nirujamana nirujati. In the world of eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose con, sciusness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind con, Syousness are delight and pleasure. Their craving is abandoned and ceases. Kaku samfaso loke, sota samfaso loke, gana samfaso loke, jiva samfaso loke, kaya samfaso loke, mano samfaso loke. Pirupam satarupam, ette satam pahiyama pahiyati, etha, nirujamana nirujati. In the world of eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, mind contact are delight and pleasure there. Craving is abandoned and ceases. Kaku samfasaj vedana loke, sota samfasaja vedana loki, kana samfasaja vedana loki, jiva samfasaja vedana loki, kaya samfasaja vedana loki, mano samfasaja vedana loki piarupam, satarupam, ette satanha pahimana pahiyati, etta nirujamana nirujati. In the world of feeling born of eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, feeling born of mind contact, are delight and pleasure, their craving is abandoned and ceases. Rupa sanya lok, sada sanya lok, ganda sanya lok, rasa sanya, lok, photaba sanya lok, dhamma sanya lok, piarupan sarupam, etta satana pahiyamana payati, etta nirujamana nirujati. In the world of visual perception, auditory perception, olfactory perception, gustatory perception, tactile perception, mental perception are delight and pleasure, their craving is abandoned and ceases. Rupa sansatana lok, sada sansatana lok, ganda sansatana lok, rasa sansatana lok, photaba sansatana lok, dhamma sansatana lok, piarupam sadarupam, etha tana pahiyamana pahiyati, etha, nirujamana nirujati. In the world of visual volition, auditory volition, olfactory volition, gustatory volition, tactile volition, mental volition are delight and pleasure, their craving is abandoned and ceases. Rupatanha lok, sadatanha lok, gandatan lok, rasatanha, lok, photabatanha loke, dhammatanha lok, piarupam sadarupam, etta satanha pahena pahayati, etta nirujamana nirujati. In the world of visual craving, auditory craving, olfactory craving, gustatory craving, tactile craving, mental craving are delight and pleasure, their craving is abandoned and ceases. Rupa vitako lok, sada vitako lok, ganda vitako lok, rasa vitako lok, phota baba vitako lok, dhamma vitako lok, piarupam satarupam, etta satana pahiyamana payati, etta, nirujamana nirujati. In the world of visual initial application, auditory initial application, olfactory initial application, gustatory initial application, tactile initial application, mental initial application are delight and pleasure, their craving is abandoned and ceases. Rupa vicharo lok, sada vicharo lok, ganda vicharo lok, rasa vicharo, lok fataba vicharo lok, dhamma vikaro loke piarupam satarupam, etta satana pahiyamana pahayati, etta nirujamana nirujati. Item, vukati bikav dukkanirodham aryasakam. In the world of visual sustained application, auditory sustained application, olfactory sustained application, gustatory sustained application, tactile sustained application, mental sustained application, are delight and pleasure, their craving is abandoned and ceases. This, monks, is called the noble futh of the cessation of suffering. Magasakana Deso, the exposition of the truth of the path, 402. Katamancha, Bhikkhave, Dukkanirodhagamini Patipada Arya Sakam, Ayameva, Aryo Atangiko Mago Sayatidam, Samadhi Sama Sankapo Sama, Vaka Sama Kamanto Sama Ajivo Sama Vayamo Samasadi Sama, Samadhi. What, monks, is the noble futh of the path leading to the cessation of suffering? It is this very noble eightfold path, namely, right view, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Kadamaka, Bhikkhave Samaditi, Yanko Bhikkhave, Dukkha Jnanam, Dukkha Samudaya Jnanam, Dukkha Nirodhe Jnanam, Dukkha Nirodha Gaminya, Patipadaya Jnanam, Ayam Vukati, Bhikkhave Samaditi. What, monks, is right view? Whatever, monks, is knowledge of suffering, knowledge of the cause of suffering, knowledge of the cessation of suffering, and knowledge of the path leading to the cessation of suffering. This, monk, is called right view. Katamo Bhikkhave Samasankapo, Nekama Sankapo Abhyapada, Sankapo Avihimsa Sankapo, Ayam Vukati Bhikkhave Samasankapo. What, monks, is right thought? Thoughts of renunciation, thoughts. 5164e, 5164 ohm malice, thoughts. 5164e, 5164 ohm cruelty. This, monks, is called right thought. Kadamaka Bhikkhave Samavacha, Musavada Veramani Pisunaya Vakaya, Veramani Farusaya Vachaya, Veramani Samphapalapa Veramani Ayam, Vukati Bhikkave Samavacha. What monks is right speech? Abstaining 5164 falsehood, abstaining. 5164 backbiting, abstaining 5164 abuse, and abstaining 5164 idle chatter. This, monks, is called right speech. Katamoka Bhikkave Samakamanto. Panatipada Veramani Adinadana. Veramani Kamasumachachara Veramani. I am Vuket Bhikkave Samakamanto. What, monks, is right action? Abstaining 5164 killing living beings. Abstaining 5164 taking what is not given. Abstaining 5164 sexual misconduct. This, monks, is called right action. Katamoka Bhikkave Sama Ajivo. Ida Bhikkave Aryasavako. Micha Ajivam Pahaya Sama Ajivena Jivitam Kapeti. I am Vukave Samajivo. What, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, a noble disciple having abandoned wrong livelihood earns a living with a right livelihood. This, monks, is called right livelihood. Katamoka Bhikkave Samavayamo. Idha Bhikkave Bhikkhu Anupan. Nanam Papakanam Akusalanam Damanam Anupadaya Chandam Janati. Vayamati Viryam Arabati Citam Paganati Padahati. Upananam. Apanam. Papakanam Akusalanam Damanam Pahanaya Chandam Janati Vayamati. Viryam Arabati Citam Paganati Padahati. Anupananan Kusalanam. Damanam Upadaya Chandam Janati Vayamati Viryam Arabati Citam. Paganhati Padahati, Upananam Kusalanam Damanam Thitiya. Asamosaya Biyo Bhavaya Vepalaya Bhavanaya Parapurya Chandam Janeti, Vayamati Viryam Arabati Citam Paganhati Padahati. I am Vakati, Bhikkhave Samavayamo. What, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk generates will, stirs up energy, applies his mind, and strives for the non-arising of evil, unwholesome states that have not yet arisen. Generates will, stirs up energy, applies his mind, and S5s for the abandoning of evil, unwholesome. States that have arisen, generates will, stirs up energy, applies his mind, and S5s for the arising of wholesome states that have not yet arisen. Generates will, stirs up energy, applies his mind, and S5s for the maintenance, non-disappearance, and development of wholesome states that have arisen. This, monks, is called right effort. Katamaka Bhikkave Samasati. Ida Bhikkave Bhikkhu Kai. Kayanupasi Viharati Atapi Sampajano Satima Vinaya Loke. Abhijadomanasam. Vedanasu Vedananupasi Viharati Atapi Sampajano. Satima Vinaya Loke Abhijadomanasam. Chitte Sitanupasi Viharati Atapi. Sampajano Satima Vinaya Loke Abhijadomanasam. Dhammesu. Dhammanupasi Viharati Atapi Sampajano Satima Vinaya Loke. Abhijadomanasam. I am Vakati, Bhikkave Samasati. What, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk dwells, contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending, and mindful, having overcome covetousness and sorrow concerning the world. He dwell contemplating feelings in feelings. He dwells. Contemplating thoughts in thoughts. He dwells contemplating mental. Objects in mental objects, ardent, clearly comprehending, and mindful, having overcome covetousness and sorrow concerning the world. This, monks, is called right mindfulness. Katamoka Bhikkave Samasamadhi. Ida Bhikkave Bhikkhu Vivacheva. Kamahi Vivacha Akusalahi Dhammahi Savikam Savicharam Vivekajam. Pitisukam Pathamam Janam Upasampaja Viharati. Vita Kavicharana. Vupasama Ajatam Sampasadanam Cetaso Ekodibhavam Avitakam. Avicharam Samadhijam Tiam Pitisukam Dutiam Janam Upasampaja Viharati. Pitya Kaviraga Upekocha Viharati. Satoka Sampajano. Sukhancha Kayana. Patisavedeti Yantam Arya Achakanti Upekako Satima Sukhavihariti. Tatiam Janam Upasampaja Viharati. Sukhasaka Pahana Dukkasacha. Pahana Pabeva Somanasarumanasanam Athangama Adukamasukam. Upekasati Parisudim Katutam Janam Upasampaja Viharati. Ayam Vukati Bhikkave Samasamadhi. Idam Vukati Bhikkave Dukkaniradagamini Patipada Aryasakam. What, monks, is right concentration? Here, monks, a monk aloof 5164 sensual thoughts, aloof 5164 unwholesome states, attains to and abides in. The first absorption with initial application, sustained application, with joy and bliss born of seclusion, 5164 the hindrances, with the calming of, initial and sustained application, with the mind inwardly tranquil he, attains to and abides in the second absorption without initial and sustained application, with joy and bliss born of concentration. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain and the extinguishing of the former happiness and sorrow, he attains to and abides in the fourth absorption purified by equanimity, and mindfulness. This, monks, is called right concentration. This, monks, is called the noble futh of the path leading to the cessation of suffering. 403. Idi ajatam dhamesu dhamanupasi viharati, bahidava. Dhamesu dhamanupasi viharati. Ajata bahidava dhamesu. Dhamanupasi viharati. Samudaya dhamanupasi va dhamesu viharati. Vaya dhamanupasi va dhamesu viharati. Samudaya vaya. Dhamanupasi va dhamesu viharati. Ati dhamati va panasasati. Paktu patita hoti yavade vanyanamataya patisatimataya anisitota. Viharati. Nacha kinchi loke upadiyati. Evampiko bhikkhave bhikkhu. Dhamesu dhamanupasi viharati katusu aryasachisu. Thus he dwells contemplating mental objects internally and externally. While contemplating mental objects, he is aware that they arise and pass away. His awareness is established that mental objects exist, but that they are not a being, nor a person, neither a woman nor a man, not a self, nor anything pertaining to a self. He does not regard mental objects as I or mine. Thus he clings to nothing in the world. Thus, monks, a monk dwells, contemplating mental objects in the Four Noble Fuths. The above paragraph should be understood in the same way as explained previously. Sakapabam nititam. The truth section is complete. Dhammanupasana nitira. The contemplation of mental objects is complete. 404. Yohi kochi, bhikkhave, ime kataro satipatthana eva bhaveya sadavasani. Tasad vinam phalanam anyantaram phalam patikankam dithavadame. Anya, sativa upadisise anagamita. Whoever, monks, thus develops these four foundations of mindfulness, for 7 years can expect one of 25164 uites, final knowledge in this very life, or if there is any remainder, the attainment of non-returning. This promise made at the end of the discourse has some conditions attached. In saying that one can expect one of 25164 5364 7 years, the words eva bhaveya should not be overlooked. Thus develops means that if one develops the four foundations of mindfulness ardently, clearly comprehending, and mindfully for 7 years, without taking a break, without relinquishing the burden of contemplation, the meditator must also do so, having overcome covetousness and sorrow concerning the world. That is, one must practice with the right motivation, not for the sake of achieving fame or fortune, nor for fear of earning a livelihood in the world, but with a sincere and earnest desire to escape 5164 the cycle of rebirth, samsara. This promise was made during an era when the living Buddha was present, and when those who practiced under his guidance had excellent perfections, parami, so the longest it should take would be 7 years, while those with superior perfections could expect to attain final knowledge A5364 ear only 1 year, 7 months, 1 month, or only 7 days. Thus, the Blessed One continued to encourage those in the audience. Tittantu, bhikkhave, satavasani, yohi kochi bhikkhave imekataro, Satipatthāna evam bhaveya chavasani, panka vasani, katari vasani, tini vasani, dve vasani ekam vasam, tittatu, bhikkhave ekam vasam. Yohi kochi bhikkhave ime kataro satipatthane, evam bhaveya satamasani, tasad vinam phalana anyataram phalam, patikankam diteva dame anya, sativa upadises anagamita. Let alone monks 7 years. Whoever monks thus develops these four foundations of mindfulness for 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, let alone monks 1 year. Whoever monks thus develops these four foundations of mindfulness for 7 months can expect one of 25164 yutes, final knowledge in this very life, or if there is any remainder, the attainment of non-returning. 7 months is not very long at all if, at the end of it, one would be guaranteed to attain the final goal, or at least non-returning. A student who has finished his or her degree could afford to take a gap year to ordain, temporarily as a monk or nun, in order to practice seriously for 6 months or a year. Even if they could not attain the lowest path of SF theme winning, whatever insights they could gain during that period would surely be of great benefit to establish their morality, concentration, and wisdom for the remainder of their lives. Tittantu, bhikkhave, satamasani, yohi kochi, ime kataro, satipatthana eva bhaveya chamasani, panchamasani, katari masani, tini masani, dve masani, ekam masam, adamasam. Tittatu, bhikkhave, adamaso, yohi kochi, bhikkhave, ime kataro satipatthana eva, bhaveya satam, tasad vinam phalana anyataram phala, Padikankam dithevadame anya, sati va upadisise anagamatati. Let alone monks 7 months. Whoever monks thus develops these 4 foundations of mindfulness for 6 months, 5 months, 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, half a month, let alone half a month monks. Whoever monks thus develops these 4 foundations of mindfulness for 7 days can expect one of 2 5164 uites, final knowledge in this very life, or if there is any remainder, the attainment of non-returning. The shortest period mentioned here is 7 days. Although that is an extremely brief period of practice, I have heard of one meditator who attained to the knowledge of equanimity, a 5364, only 2 weeks. A diligent meditator could surely attain some of the lower stages of insight, a 5364 ere a few weeks or months of intensive meditation practice. Those who fail to attain the path in its fruition, even a 5364 ere a prolonged period of practice, may have some obstructive karma, or they may just be lazy or clinging to wrong views. They might also have made a prior determination to attain Buddhahood. Mostly those intelligent Buddhists who have read thus far must be feignable individuals, neya. It is very unlikely that a person with only 2 root condition rebirth, vihetu, patisandhi, would be interested in books like this. Whatever the case may be, no efforts are wasted. The immature perfections will only become mature through the cultivation of the enlightenment factors. The only person who is fully hopeless of attaining anything worthwhile is the lazy person. 405. Ekaino ayam bhikkhave, mago satanam visuddhya sokapardivanam, samatikamaya dukkado manasana athangamaya nyayasa adhigamaya, Nibbānasa sachikiriyaya yadidam karo satipattanati, idiyam tam, vutam idamitam patanti idamavoka bhagava. Atamana te bhikkhu bhagavato basitam abhinandunti.